and we're going to make an offering first. The very first thing we do is we make an offering. Just as I always say, just as we would if we visited somebody, we'd never go empty-handed, would we? When we go somewhere. So here we're going to have teachings, and we're going to imagine we're having them from the Buddha. And this is including me, I promise. I mean, I'm speaking, but I'm wanting to hear the teachings from the Buddha. We all want to hear the teachings from the Buddha. So we're going to make an offering first. And here we're offering what's called a mandala. Now, mandala is this word that really refers to somebody's abode. So we see all those pictures in the Tantra, all those circular drawings, you know, they're just architectural drawings of the pure lands of all the various Buddhas. They're like, that's all they are, architectural drawings. They're depicting various universes. Well, this is our universe, you know, maybe it's not the way we think about it with Mount Meru in the middle and things like this. But if we don't know this Buddhist cosmological view of the world, or the Buddhist view of the world, we'll think of our own. So we just visualize, imagine piling up all the most marvelous things in the world. And the bigger your mind, the better, the more generous, the more big, the more expansive our mind, the more powerful. So we just imagine all the beautiful things of the world that beings use, that makes them happy. We're going to offer these to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. And the second verse is expressing that wish for the teachings. Saji Perki Jugshing Metog Tramri Rablingji Ni De Genpadi Sange Jingdu Mikte Ulwagi Jokanam Dag Jingla Chapasho Jetsunama Jampa Kenam Kichaku Kala Kense Chutintrik Jitat Sampe Duljetzin Mala Zabye Turki Chapa Abchuso. So we can imagine now the Buddha very happily receives our offering. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. So we have one more prayer. Refuge prayer. I'll sing this one. We'll sing this one now. So this next one, the first two lines are for those of us who figure we are already Buddhists, who were committed. It's reminding us of our reliance on Buddha Dhamma Sangha. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. The second two lines are expressing this our altruistic aspirate or our altruistic goal or purpose for being here together, as the Lamas would call it, stating our motivation. And I want to talk about this today. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha's benefit all sentient beings. So we sing it in Tibetan. And in other words, if you're thinking, I'm going to listen to these teachings to see if there's some tools I can take to help me develop my amazing potential so I can be a benefit to others. Sangye charam soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyapsuchi dagi chonyen gi personam ki drola pencher sangye dropa shog sangye charam soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyapsuchi dagi chonyen gi personam ki drola pencher sangye dropa shog Sangye charam soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyapsuchi dagi chonyen gi personam ki drola pencher sangye drupasho. Okay, so now what I want to do is just go over what His Holiness did last night. I don't know why everything got cut short. There's no explanation on the websites either. If you were watching last night, what happened? What's wrong, Rosanna? Unmute yourself. What do you say?
I watched it and there was no explanation of why it's.
No, that's right. There's nothing. I know, exactly. I don't know why. It's very curious. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe the internet went. I can't imagine it. Because, I mean, His Holiness was about to give us all these transmissions, you know. So,
I know, right?
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, Alessia asked me if I'd go through them all. So why don't we go? I mean, it's not His Holiness, but at least we can go through them, and some of us will know them and some won't. So we can discuss them, okay? So if you've got your PDF, then why don't you put it up on the screen, Andrew? It might be easier to all discuss it together. I know, it's very curious. I know, it just stopped and there's no explanation. We're all so excited about getting 90 minutes. Okay.
You want your document, Venerable Robina?
Let's show it, put it up on the screen. Yeah, we can see it together.
Which page?
There's 2 pages. There's 2 sides. There's just 2. The first one. Start at the beginning.
Sorry, which document? I just want to be...
The one I sent you this morning. 1 page. Or you didn't receive that one?
That one. I have that one I'm pulling up now. I'll have it.
That's the one, and that's what I wanted you to send everybody. But we can do it on the screen together now for sure.
Okay.
It's about last night, the mantras. So I transcribed some of His Holiness's words, and each of the mantras is there, so we'll go through them, and we'll just say them together. I mean, it's not the same as receiving them from His Holiness, you know, of course it's not. Okay, so, okay, so here we go. So the first one, His Holiness said, was Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra. And then the next one he said was Medicine Buddha, and that's Sanskrit. There's the Sanskrit by Shajajay Guru. And then you've got, as His Holiness said, Avalokitesvara, which is Chen raising in Tibetan, the deity of compassion and the patron deity of Tibet. And by the way, this word deity, it really just means Buddha. It's just used in Tantra. It's the equivalent of the word Buddha. There's no difference. So the next one, as His Holiness called it, the Master Tsongkhapa's name praise, the 4-line prayer. This is, we know it, as they say in Tibetan, it's called the Migtsema. So it's basically 4 lines, and there's 4 or 5 lines, but this is 4. Oh, I did the 5-line. Okay, doesn't matter, but His Holiness is going to give the 4 lines. The 4 lines is missing the middle one. It's just how it's a tradition. So this is the 5-line, but he was going to give us the 4 lines. So all this is, as you'll see, we'll go through each one in a minute. We'll go through each one. The next one, Padmasambhava's mantra. And then His Holiness said, when Buddhism was first established in Tibet, it was done through the help of Padmasambhava, together with Shantarakshita, and the Tibetan king Songtsen Gampo, who were known as the Ken Lob Chur, Ken Abbot, Lob Master, and Chur the Dharma King. We'll go through this again later. And then next, Tara's mantra, Arya Tara, and Green Tara's mantra. And then His Holiness said, when you do these recitations of the mantras that I will give you the transmission of, but which we didn't have the merit to get, if you could do it within the parameters of the view of emptiness and bodhicitta, it would be very beneficial. After this, you could recite the various mantras in groups, if possible, otherwise do it privately. And even if you can, and if you can even recite these mantras fearing the pandemic, that also would be some help. And that's it. So we'll go through these now, okay? Just roughly. Start at the beginning. So the first one, of course, is Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra. So a mantra is Sanskrit. I'll just talk a bit about mantras. I'll talk a bit about this, the meaning of this, and especially if we take the Vajrayana understanding. So I find this, for me, I find these little snippets of information that you can get here and there, and it kind of helps you put the big picture together. And I find this piece of information very helpful. We discussed this when we talked yesterday about karma. So it's very helpful to understand it here as well. And I'll explain what I'm talking about. Hang on. Let me just close my emails. I can't move my thing. I can't move it. Do you mind, Andrew, just for a minute, taking off the screen, the picture, the words? Thank you. I just want to get into close my emails. These little bells ring all the time. Okay, we go back again now. That's okay. The words. Or people can have their own words if you. No, that's okay. We've got the words here together. We'll do it. That's fine. Okay. So the first one. So let me just first describe. No, okay. Take it away again, and I'm going to talk a bit first. Take it away again. We can see each other, and we'll talk. And now we'll do it in a minute. Okay. So now, what is a mantra? So to understand that, we've got to understand Vajrayana. And as we talked, as we've talked yesterday. Let me say it again. I find, like I said before, I haven't studied extensively all the 30, 40 years they do in the monasteries. There's no way I've done that much study. But, I listen to Lamas over Lama Yeshi's teachings. I read His Holiness. I go to teachings. I edit books. So pick up a little bit as I go along. I'm trying to be authentic and try not to say things that are made up. That would be pretty terrible. It'd throw me out of my head. So I try to be correct. But you pick up different things. And somehow, this is something I find by the way, just something I find very helpful. I'm going back a bit now, and I'll come to the point. It's okay. But all this is very helpful. But one of the commonest questions we all have, because this is called religion, this is called spiritual teachings and practices, we have a very powerful assumption that we never question, that somehow it's made up, therefore isn't you can't prove it's true. It's coming from on high. It's revelation. And the only way you can live with it is by believing in it. This is absolutely, is it not, how we think about religious teachings. And obviously that makes sense if we are describing the view of a creator religion, which is what most religions are that we know about in the world, the big ones. You know, all those ones coming from that little place called Israel. You know, the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jews, you know. Look at it, all coming from the same source, and all coming from the concept of one God, one whose job is to create the universe, you know? So you can see in different countries and different religions, it all depends on their relationship with him. I mean, the Jews have a fairly heavy-duty relationship. God's this kind of very fierce person, you know. Other people think of him as love, all different. But essentially, it's the concept of he and a creator. This energy, this being that didn't get created, is always been there and is the source of everything else. That's perfectly fine, but it just ain't Buddha's view. Buddha argues with that. He's not being rude, but he would say from his own direct experience, that is not how it is. Now, the point is, we then go, oh, well, that's another view, Buddhism, we can believe that one if we like. You know, we go around choosing, like supermarket choosing, and we decide, I'll believe in this, and I'll believe in that, and I'll believe in this. But now this is what's interesting. When we now, over the centuries, we know, to say it coming from Christianity, no, coming from all of that, gradually in Europe especially, we're very Eurocentric, you know, us Christian Judea people, gradually, as we know, coming from Mr. Galileo, who started to make trouble, and he started questioning things. I mean, he probably got burnt at the stake, right? So he started questioning the absolute dogmas, and he started to prove things. So I think it was some fellow way back before then, one of those Greeks, who proved actually, I forget now, I don't remember all these things, I haven't studied it, but certainly, you know, Galileo started talking about how the earth goes around the sun, not the other way around. He was practically burned at the stake because the teachings at the time said the opposite. But he came up with experiential findings that proved it wasn't true. So this, as we know, this began what we now call science. Like I always joke, but it's true. As soon as we want a fancy word, we go back to the Greeks because we think they're the fanciest. So every fancy word we have is Greek, you know? Half the mental illnesses are in Greek. Psychopath, pedophile. It makes it all fancy. We're very funny. It's very funny, actually. So anyway, and psychology, you know, the mind. So anyway, as we know, we now are in a world, several hundred years later, where the prevailing view that's the top dog in intelligence is called science. It's called materialism. It does not assert anything you can't see with a microscope, roughly speaking. We know this. So the one we take seriously, and this is coming from Galileo, use your common sense, use your intelligence, use your noggin. Don't just believe something blindly, prove it to be true. Well, what's interesting, we Eurocentric Judeo-Christians never bothered to check about the Indians. They've been thinking this way for thousands of years before the fancy Christians and people in Galileo came along. But we only pay attention to the Europeans and the Greeks. You get my point here, the Italians, whatever. But the Buddha has always had this view. Even the Indian great scholars and yogis before him, who still did assert an essential energy called Shiva or God, whatever they want to call it, and even though they had this other level of analysis and logic and internal practices, they're the ones out of which Buddha came, you know. But he came along and absolutely the central component, and His Holiness said it last night, you know. His Holiness, and that's why all the scientists love him. There he is with these amazing views that talk about reincarnation and past and karma, things that we assume in our deity religions, the God religions, that you can't prove that. And it's logical why we think you can't prove that. Because we only assert a brain. We only assert the functioning of brain, which is the grosser conceptual and sensory level of cognition. Anything beyond that, where we can't observe the brain functioning, we can't observe any functioning of cognition. That's why, as I mentioned, I think yesterday or one day, when I was working on Lama Zopa's book about how to help at the time of death, that I read that book by that American journalist, the medical journalist, The Undead, all the problems and obstacles that are now happening in the medical profession, particularly in the States, the real conflict and confusion now, when does death really occur? Because it all come about as a result of learning to, you know, cutting organs out and giving people organs. So of course we think death is when you stop breathing because there's no evidence of any life. But the fact is Buddha's view says no, got another whole view, because Buddha asserts the consciousness is not physical and it's got these far more subtle levels of cognition. Now these Indians 3,000 years ago discovered that. And Buddha, so there's a fundamental component in all of Buddha's views and the previous views, that cognition has subtler views, subtler levels of capacity for cognition, subtler levels. And this technique called single point of concentration is there available to anybody who wants it to find your own, to access your own microscope of your mind. Now, those techniques don't exist in our modern world because it's not about the brain. But now, because of His Holiness, the last 40 years, so many marvelous discussions with all the best brains in the West, starting to doubt our positions and question our assumptions. So clearly, but what I'm getting at is the view we have is still very entrenched. If it's religion, you can't prove it. If it's religion, it's superstition. It's on the bottom. It's on the bottom of the totem pole. It's the least respected area of knowledge in our world, isn't it? The top one is the hard sciences. Even psychology is really low down because that sounds too subjective, you know. There's nothing you can point your finger at. So this is our culture, and we can get very caught up again, get very arrogant and very fearful about not being in part of the top group, you know. So we've got to look at all this. But the fundamental view that Galileo started to use, which is you check up and you can prove things, that has always been the Buddhist position. For 2,500 years, that has always been the Buddhist position. That has always been the Buddhist position. As the Dalai Lama says, if you start to practice Buddhism, and as you start to check on it, you check up on him, you like the Buddha, you check up, you do your research, you think he's valid, and then you take what he says as your working hypothesis. Like I keep pointing out, just as you would if you're trying to prove what Einstein says. There is not a fraction of difference in your process. So you go each step of the way. And like with Einstein or with Buddha, either way, if you keep going and you tick the boxes as you go, all he said that 1 + 1 is 2, I prove that. And then he says, then we go to algebra, I prove that. And as Buddhism, as you progress in Buddhism, you prove this, you prove that from your experience. First intellectually, but then from your experience. But if you get to a point where you can prove from your experience that Buddha's wrong, of course you must reject him. Of course, and he'd be the first one to be happy to find it, because what he's looking for is truth. So that view is fundamental to being a Buddhist. But most of us, we're just intellectually lazy and we'd rather have the belief one. Oh, I believe in karma. No, I don't believe in karma. And we sit in our little grab bag of beliefs and sit on them. Well, this is useless. It's like saying you believe in mathematics. What good is it? I believe in botany. What good is it? You've got to learn it and know it and experience the truth of it. That's the point, you know. So, another point I want to make, and it's exactly the same with any body of knowledge that we have ever engaged in, but we don't think it through like this. We're trying to prove and become a Buddha. We're trying to prove the possibility and become ourselves a Buddha. So let me just remind you what you'd be like. And this is really when it sounds like science fiction, and talk about religion. Even more outrageous than a creative view. That when you have accomplished this goal, when you have done the job that Buddha says we can do, which is removed utterly from your mind all obstacles, all delusions, all misconceptions, all the rubbish that's been there a long time that leads us up garden paths, and you have developed to perfection all the goodness within you, because that essentially is what Buddha means, how would you be? Well, your consciousness, which is not physical, would be pervading the universe. How could it not? You've removed all the obstacle from it. Right now, our mind is stuck in this body. We can't see past our own nose. We're only functioning at the grossest level of our cognition, sensory and conceptual. We don't remember 99% of today, and it's only 9:15 in our part of the world. And we forget about this life, forget about a past life. What a joke. Because our gross level of conceptuality hasn't got that capacity. We have to access the microscope of our mind. That level has the capacity. That's where you get clairvoyance, literally. This is part of the Buddhist deal, coming from these Indians, you know. So you take, so the first thing is you have to understand, like if you want to learn music, if you want to learn to make a cake, excuse me, keep it simple, a cake. You don't just go to the kitchen and intuit. You look at a cake, you see a carrot cake, I'll try and do that. You kind of intuit what's in it. You'll be 1,000 years and waste millions of pounds, millions of dollars of money trying to work out what a cake is just by looking at the cake. God almighty, you need some theories. You need a recipe. So don't reinvent the wheel, just ask your mum. So simple. What is she? She's a knowledge holder. She at Rigsin, she knows how to make cake. She's done it. That's a teacher. So she gives you the method. So what do you do? This is the point now. In the beginning, you're very tentative. You just do what she says, you know. But as you start to think about these things, you look at the recipe, and very soon you can read recipe books. And because you've got a bit of experience, you can see the theories and you can begin to understand what it'll be like because you're learning to know the theories. But the simple point I'm trying to make here is this. Before you get anywhere near the kitchen with your eggs and your flour and your milk and your bits and pieces ready to put in the bowl, you've got to look at the words over on the side here, and it's called a recipe. It's the theory, it's words, it's concepts. And this is the point. Any body of knowledge, and this is my point, if it's valid, any body of knowledge, not just a random feeling about something, but a body of knowledge, whether it's called cooking, playing Bach, African music, I don't care what it is, acupuncture, you know, any body of knowledge, mathematics, Buddhism, any body of knowledge that asserts certain things. This is the point now. If it is valid, it has to be coherent first, theoretically. So when you start to look at recipes and you've got a bit, you know, you start to get used to them, you just have to read a recipe and you know it makes sense. You know it fits with the laws of cooking. You know, if suddenly you saw a recipe that said 74 eggs, you know there's something wrong because it doesn't fit. So it has to be first coherent theoretically. And then what you do is, and it's easy with cakes, you get the theory and you make the cake and you just proved it. So so then you read the vast body, you know, cookbooks by the amazing geniuses. It's a coherent body of knowledge. And if it is the valid body of knowledge, it is coherent theoretically. This is absolutely logic. And this is how we learn everything in our universe, whether it's a language, whether it's cooking, whether it's physics, whether it's E equals MC squared, or whether it's Buddha. That's the Buddhist approach. It's not a separate thing. And it's exactly the same approach, not a fraction of difference. It's important to know. You don't have to believe me. Check it out yourself, even that. But get the point. So now, back to the point, what's a mantra? Here we're talking the Vajrayana model, the more esoteric, more advanced, more sophisticated level of Buddhist philosophy, psychology. Another way of putting it, it's a different way of presenting the universe. Because Buddhism is a coherent worldview. You don't have to believe me that it's coherent. That's for you to find out. But I'm stating what the Buddhists say, because I'm taking it as my working hypothesis. So all this is a working hypothesis here. I'm not trying to swallow it whole. So, according to the more esoteric, if you like, esoteric or advanced or more sophisticated level of the universe, they talk about, and I've discussed this in terms of understanding karma, how it works. That there's two phenomena in the universe. There's basically matter, and this is the model they've used for thousands of years. This is how we used to talk back in the time of Galileo. The four elements. It's been around for quite a while, even in our culture. The four elements. That's the stuff of matter. Of course, now we've got 50 million other elements. We've got a different kettle of fish now. That's perfectly fine. It's another way of presenting. But it's the four elements, and it's a very sophisticated understanding. The Tibetan medical system is based on this, and the acupuncture system is based on this. The Ayurvedic system is based on this. And they don't just it's not hippy-trippy. I mean, the Tibetan doctors study for like 12, 13 years, detailed, each sophisticated understanding of the physical elements, you know. So this Vajrayana model talks about the physical world has got four elements, and then there are minds, consciousnesses. So we have to take the view here. We're discussing something not physical, consciousness, not physical, and these consciousnesses, you know, mind possessor. We're a sentient being. We're a person, and a person. The difference between this four elements and this four elements is this one is imbued with the consciousness. As long as there's the sound coming out my mouth, you can take the view there's a consciousness here. When I drop dead, they're going to be exactly the same. There's a bunch of four elements here, and there's a bunch of four elements there, and the mind has gone. So a sentient being or a mind possessor, the consciousness imbued, you know, that's got a physical component. And now the point is this, in the Vajrayana, this is fundamental to understand the whole of the Vajrayana technology, the whole of the way the universe functions, is that these four elements, every mind begins with this, every mind is inextricably linked with its own set of the four elements. It's just the way it is, its own set of the four elements. So when we understand karma, like we talked, when the mind is negative, as Amazopa says, when the mind is negative, that programs your mind to be negative. Plus, it pollutes the wind energies connected to your mind. And that's what your Tibetan doctor, she feels your pulses. And she can feel the imbalance of the certain wind energies. And she knows it's related to your anger. She knows it's related to your attachment because she knows that. And that's why you've got this imbalance. That's why you're getting sick and crazy as well. They're utterly, intimately, inextricably connected. So now, in this view, and we go through this in the death process, you know, if you understand the death process, this is really crucial. Certainly we learned in the Tibetan Buddhist system, and it's the Vajrayana. The death process is a gradual deconstruction of the components of the person described in 8 stages. So basically we've got gross consciousness and gross body, this bag of bones here. And this is the point. The first 4 stages are the gradual deconstruction of the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the air element. And that's the physical components. And by the time you get to the 4th one, when the air stops, you look like you're dead forever. You know, you're ready for the body bag. But you're not dead yet, according to this model. Because your subtle consciousness, a subtler level of your consciousness, which is exactly the same level as when you dream. Your dream mind is your subtle mind. You know very well, because the sleep process is exactly the same process as the death process. Obviously, death is more radical, because when you stop breathing at the time of death, there's no breathing. But when you don't totally stop breathing and asleep, but you do lose your sensory, don't you? And you go to the subtle level, and you wake up in these weird experiences called dreams. That's just subtle consciousness. But of course, we've got no control over that. It's all weird and wacky. But the great yogis can. That's subtle consciousness. That level of mind has the capacity of clairvoyance, and people have things like experiences like this. That level of the mind can see things in the past, in the future, can see someone else in another country. That's what you can get through meditation, because you access your subtle mind. Then you've got very subtle, and that's the deepest, subtlest level of your cognition. That's called very subtle consciousness. And so the gross level, we've got this bag of bones. Subtle level, you've got the subtle 72,000 subtle channels coursing through your body, these wind energies going through all those channels, and all your different mental states connected to those wind energies. A highly complex system. So now we're getting to mantras, okay? Now we're getting to mantras. And then you've got very subtle consciousness, with the subtlest level of your being, beyond which you can't be subtler, and the very subtle level of the physical together, inextricably linked. It's called clear light mind, and it's inextricably linked with a subtle wind energy. And then that will, when you die, that's when it leaves the body. The second that leaves the body, and it can be 3 days after you stop breathing, that's death. And then you just go through this process, all programmed by your own mind, your own karma, and you wake up in an intermediate state, which is just like a dream state. And that can last up to a few human weeks. And then when mummy and daddy hop into bed, your new life comes, and you run like a magnet, and off you go again, new person. So anyway, the gross, subtle, and very subtle consciousness. So that's that. So now, mantra is Sanskrit syllables or words strung together, that seem a bit esoteric and abstract, or that can be translated literally, but often it's very hard to see the meaning. And all the great yogis over the centuries have said there's something incredibly powerful and pure and blessed about Sanskrit sounds. So sound is very interesting. In Tantra, they say sound, mantra, sound, speech is the wind energy. But the 4 elements is the subtlest one, the wind energy, the wind. It is, in other words, if you're in a vacuum, there'd be no sound. We know that. So with the air, because there's air, and this is a subtler air energy, when it comes out the mouth, that's called a word or a bird screaming, whatever. It's a sound. So Sanskrit is said to be the purest of sound. So certainly when it comes to all these Buddhas, whom I've said, who, as I said, are just the manifestation of different psychological qualities that you're trying to cultivate, or different psychological qualities that you're trying to purify. I get confused when I say these things. I don't think I said this in this time, did I? Because you see, I'm looking every day at the same computer. I used to go on aeroplanes, and I'd know I'd be in Holland. One day I'd be in Sydney, and I could tell the difference. But now I can't tell the difference. Do you understand? So I'm confused. Did we talk about this yesterday or the day before? We didn't, did we? God, we did it the day before. We did it when we talked about Tara in another place. In my room, in my computer, but another center. I should make notes. Okay, so what we're talking about here is we have to talk about this because we're talking about a mantra, and we're talking about these Buddhas. Who are they, So, okay, there's some more to say. Goodness me. All right. So, what, gross consciousness? This one here with this gross body. And that's mostly the sensory. That's why the senses are so powerful for us. Then our subtle mind, which is actually our mental states, all our thoughts and feelings and emotions. They're all there, but they're more subtle. And they don't depend upon the existence of a body at all. But the body is massive for us, as we've been talking, And then we have very subtle consciousness. Okay, so mantra is sound. And if you think about these subtle wind energies, then when sound comes out the mouth, that's words. And that's what's interesting. They talk about how the greatest, the best, the gift, the greatest offering of the Buddha is speech. We've got body, and we have speech, and we have mind. So speech is the way to benefit sentient beings. They talk about the power of speech, and there's something related to mantra, to getting there. But somehow you think about speech, that's the human thing. We're so clever, so intelligent, so sophisticated, so brilliant intelligence. We've created language. I mean, birds have language, dogs have language. I know we all love to think that dogs are so special, and whales or other beings, one of those dolphins, you know, and it's fine. But sorry, they're not as clever as humans. You can't say they are. Humans are unbelievably brilliantly intelligent. And tragically, as His Holiness said yesterday, we're using our intelligence for destruction. That's the tragedy of it, because there's no morality. We've lost the morality, you know. So anyway, intelligence is obvious, and we have created over the thousands of years of humans, we've created these sounds that represent things, and we're so clever we can put them all together. I mean, we're incredible. The intelligence is incredible. So sound is powerful, but look, I think these days, look how words are so destructive. I mean, you go onto internet now, and I read a website, I drown in confusion because you can trust not one single word you read. Everything is just made up garbage. Sounds that come out of our mouths, 99% of the time we don't even know we're speaking the truth. We're speculating most of the time. No, people got no control over our minds. So there's 40 billion conspiracy theories. We are all going mad, and we vomit them all out of our mouths. So the stuff that comes out of our mouth is unbelievably shocking. So one of the most powerful way of practice, level of practice, this is junior school. Forget Vajrayana, okay? Junior school is control your body and control your speech. I mean, for us, that sounds such a silly kind of, what a boring thing to say, control my speech. I want to meditate, please. Well, excuse me, you can't meditate if you can't control the servants of your crazy mind, if you can't control your speech. And this is junior school practice. But look at most of us. We are completely out of control. The idea of controlling what we say, some of us are born with discipline and will control our speech, and I find that pretty powerful. I respect you enormously. Speech is so, look at the harm it does. We don't even think it matters in our culture. We are so degenerate. Look at the harm we do with speech. Forget raping and killing. Most of us don't do that. Most of us, it's our speech that is so destructive, so confusing. So the first level of practice, Buddha exhorts us to at least, don't say words that aren't true. Don't say harsh words to people. Don't say bad things about people behind their back. And don't just rabbit on about nothing. I mean, if we stopped all those four, we would say nothing in a day. Being kind to us. Think about it. We are just compelled to vomit out of our mouths because we're very social beings, and we're very anxious. We've got to talk all the time. This is how we are, you know. So to actually begin to harness our speech and to make it powerful, to make it beneficial, at least to make it not harmful, is the most profound level of practice. Do not doubt it, you know. So now, if we get to the Vajrayana, we're talking here, we want to have very powerful speech. Why? Because the Buddhas need to benefit sentient beings. They don't need a body. They're gone beyond needs of a body, but they need to take a body so they can benefit poor peanuts like you and me. And how they're going to benefit us, not just by looking at us and giving us a hug. That's nice. They've got to give us advice. They've got to tell us how we can stop suffering. We've got to listen to Buddha's teachings if we choose. We're going to want to put it into practice. That's called speech. It's the power of speech is stupendous, I tell you. And we have to practice it, starting in junior school. Control your mouth. Now, we know our lives. Look at the suffering we have in our lives in relation to speech. This is the kind of karma called experiences similar to the cause. The way you're seen and treated. It's one of the greatest sufferings we have is that people don't believe our words. Or they accuse us of speaking harshly and we didn't. Or they accuse us of saying things we didn't say. Or they don't believe our words. We know the pain of this is unbearable. That's the experience similar to the cause of actions like that with our speech before. We know it's like a nightmare. But I didn't say that. Yes, you did. We go crazy, you know. Or people simply don't believe you. Now that's the karma of women. Still the karma of women. I mean, not as bad as India, where the live wife was thrown on the funeral pyre of the dead husband. Not quite like that anymore, but some places still. It's just karma. And don't take it personally. We've all been boys and girls in countless lives. We're born in a form, when you open your mouth, a bit better these days, And it's not blaming anybody. It's just karma between us. You can't blame men. Men have been girls before, and girls have been boys before. And the karma keeps changing in different times in your world, isn't it? Different cultures. In some cultures, certainly still in some cultures, the only way girls can go around is with a black cloth from head to toe, because they're an offence to men. I mean, it's how it is. But don't get all upset about it politically. It's true, it's not cool, but the girls, guess who the girls are of this life? The arrogant boys from the last life. And guess who the arrogant boys in this life will be? The poor girls in the next life. So we've all got egg on our face. For me, I tell you, when I first met the Dharma, I haven't forgotten the mantras, I promise. I'm going to go back there. It's all heading towards it. It's just, I've got my track. It's in my head. I'll track back. Great speech. This is the point. Anyway, I'm just telling you a story here. When I first met the Lamas, I was about 31 or something, and I'd been through 10 years of intensive political activity. First I was a radical Catholic, and then I gave it up, decided it was good to, by God, hello boys, 19. And then for about 10 years, really seriously looking for a way to see the world. I didn't think of it like that, but it was like that. I look back, So first a hippie, then a radical lefty communist, then supporting black politics in London in the late 60s, early 70s. And then feminist. I heard the word feminist. Feminist, I thought it said. When I heard radical feminist, I thought, well, that's good. I like radical. Then naturally, inevitably, being radical, I kept moving on. So I became a radical lesbian feminist. Of course I did. Naturally, it's logical. It could only go in that direction. And then, of course, I went even further to become a radical lesbian separatist feminist. I think many of you have never heard of them. It was a serious political position. I was totally involved in it. But I was moving through trying to find a way to see the world. Anyway, I sort of got to a point where I realised I couldn't hate all the human race. First I blamed all the non-Catholics, then I blamed all the rich people, then I blamed all the white people, then I blamed all the male people. And there's no one left. There is not a single person left on the planet. I'd exhausted all options. And then I just didn't know where to turn. I wanted something spiritual again. So I tried TM, I went back to Mass, I tried this, I tried that. And then I bumped into Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. Now, I've been through 10 intensive years of radical immersion in radical politics. Try and hear me, like another world. So I come up for air again, and I get to this place, this Buddhist center where, for Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa, Chenrezig Institute in Australia, 1976, June, nearly June. And it was an absolute culture shock for me. I can't tell you. This is a boy-girl thing now. I'm just saying, this is a side piece about boy-girl. I'm still on the thing about mantras. And that was the most profound shock for my system, because I'd been through this 10 intensive years of serious intellectual, serious philosophizing, serious activity, trying to find the nature of the universe, trying to find the meaning of the world and suffering and blah. And I suddenly revert like 10 years, and all these hippies are there, 200 people, and all the ladies couldn't carry the buckets of water because they're ladies, and all the men did all the work, and the men were the bosses. It was the monks sat in front of the nuns. I was I can't describe the culture shock. It was an offense to my senses. I can't describe, but I knew there was something there, so I couldn't leave. I had to be there. So I stayed 2 full months, full immersion, 1 intensive month on Lama Zopa with Lam Rim. Didn't know what the hell he was talking about for 1 whole month, but I went to every class, and then 1 month retreat on Chenrezig with Lama Yeshe. And then it was a profound shock to my system. So this is where I'm getting the boy-girl thing. And what hit me, what made me stay, was I heard the Buddha says, don't believe a word I'm telling you, check it out. And then the other concept of karma was massive to me. One of the few words I heard that resonated from Lama Zopa for that 1 month was the word karma, when I heard what it meant. That had been missing in my life. I remember that was like incredibly blissful. And that then meant logically, because I said to myself, if logically Buddhism is innately patriarchal, then how in the name of Jesus, God in heaven, could I stay there? Not possible. Absolutely not possible. That would be ripping myself to pieces. But then the more I heard about karma, continuity of consciousness, rebirth, the more I heard about consciousness and mind not being physical, the more I hear that you've been a girl, been a boy, been a dog, been an ant, and the more I heard that mind in its nature, consciousness in its nature, is not male, is not female, is not ant or dog or even human. It's fundamentally pure and clear. And then due to karma, we create the cause to be different shapes and sizes. So we create the cause from arrogance to guess what? Be born as a person who's seen as a creep, called a girl. No value, you're low. Who the hell created that? I realized I had. So who could I blame? Nobody. So this was profound for my mind. That kept me going. And here I am now, 40-something years later, still looking at taking this hypothesis as my, you understand? So speech. We need speech just to get to just to go down the shop and go to the supermarket and pay your bill. You need speech. So we've got to have speech that people believe. We've got to have speech that people aren't offended by. We've got to have speech that people want to hear. So how do you get that, people? By, first of all, back in junior school, shut your mouth. Do not say words unless you think you're speaking the truth, even if it comes down to, oh, is that shop open still? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Oh, but you go there, but it was closed. Oh, I thought it was. We don't even know, even the simplest words we say, whether we're speaking the truth. We don't even think it's important. We think I'm allowed to say what I like. Well, of course you are, but look at the consequences. So by controlling your speech, check first. Is what I'm about to say true? Second, don't say bad words to somebody. Don't harshly, don't criticize them. 3, even more shocking. This is our favorite activity, saying bad things about people when they're not there. We spend most of our lives doing that about politicians. We go berserk, endless, thinking it's called intelligent conversation. All we're doing is vomiting negativity about people. Now, the world might be in a bad way, I agree with you, but how does it help? Vomiting out all your angry talk, like as if it's sort of noble to do so. And this is the point, the first point for the Buddha. Forget the harm you do to others with your speech. Look at the harm you do to yourself. This is the point the Buddha's making, junior school, entry level, grade 1 karma, that we create ourselves. So even if you're in your home on your own.
Mira, ella se fue a Brasil desde el año pasado.
Can you turn your, Sonia, can you?
Y haz de cuenta que el 24 de abril,
can you
saca
please
la cuenta.
Sonia, Andrew. Thank you. So if you're home on your own, think about this. No one's there, but then you're shouting, you're yelling, you're cursing. Who in the name of God in heaven and Mother of God do you think you're harming? It is pretty evident, right? Yourself. So this is the part that we find the hardest. We're so disconnected from ourselves that we judge who we are in terms of how people see us. So as long as we look nice and sound nice and then we think we're going to approve of us, we think we're a good person. No, you create yourself every second. You create yourself every second. So everything you think and do and say, and here we're talking about saying, you're producing yourself. So if you're shouting every day, what kind of person do you think you are? And now this is karma going to Vajrayana, and then by your anger in your speech and your mind, because your speech is sound, is connected to the winds in your subtle channels, and those winds are connected to your anger, you're programming yourself to continue being angry and to get sick. You're polluting your winds, which eventually manifests at a gross level, and you get born to a mother with bad genes, and you've got sick body. What the hell do you think? You have caused that sickness. What by your negative speech? Even forget the killing part. So how do you start? By having pure speech, way down at the Vajrayana end, junior school. Control your speech. That means already you're working on your mind, because you're using your mind to discipline your speech. You're not using your mind to work on your mind yet. That's high school. You're using your mind to discipline your speech, which is stupendous level of practice. You know yourself. Some people we know have kind speech, have good speech, don't lie, don't badmouth. We know how joyful they are to be around, don't we? We love people like that. That's because of their habit. It's incredible. To be like that is such a special thing. Or to be a patient person. I think patient people are like saints. It means they don't have a strong tendency to be angry. Therefore, their speech isn't harmful. It's very profound. We create all this. We make ourselves. I don't know why we're surprised. You know, if you practice piano for 10 years, who in the hell created that pianist? You! But we think it's different when it comes to anger and love and compassion. We look for someone else out there to blame. It's very bizarre. We're very weird, in our modern world. Very strange analysis we have. So speech is so important. Now, if you want to benefit people, forget about even just benefiting their health. You want them to believe you if you're a good doctor. If they don't believe you, you can't be a doctor. And especially if you want to benefit people with, with something like a path to enlightenment, uncharted territory, you better have words that are powerful. And we know people like that. Look at Dalai Lama. The whole world adores him. Okay, the Chinese communists don't adore him, but lots of other people do. Millions do. And trust his words. So his words have power. We remember them. We hear his voice, you know. That's because from what? First, junior school controlling your speech, not lying, not harsh, not bad-mouthing, and not rabbiting on about nothing, just vomiting out rubbish. This is profound practice. It seems so passive, but it's a profound practice. And the next level, compassion wing, whatever you do say is for the benefit who is in front of you. And now the Vajrayana is where it's explained, you know. So here, mantra is an incredibly powerful tool. We understand more how it works with the wind energies and all that. So the mantra is Sanskrit. And many mantras aren't related to a Buddha, all kinds of mantras, you know, but all the Buddhas, I'll say it again here because I thought I said it, but I mustn't have. Clearly here, I mustn't have. So what is Buddha here? What is Buddha? Okay. Buddha, the word Buddha, Sangye, Buddha, the actual meaning of that word is pure, unmanifest, all compassionate, all wise, all pervasive, all powerful mind, fully developed. That's a Buddha. And there are millions of beings who have become this. We can deduce that from Buddha's teachings. People have been practicing that and perfecting it and becoming their own Buddha. So when you're at that level of Buddha, you don't need, like I said, you don't need a body. Bodies are the fruit of negative karma, even nice bodies. Any kind of realm of existence, all kinds of bodies, different kinds of configurations of the four elements, conjoined with the mind, all created by that person's karma. So when you're a Buddha, you're beyond the negative, you're beyond all this stuff. You finished the job. You've purified your mind, you've perfected your mind, you've stopped creating negativity, all the junk is gone. So you're now in your true state, in your natural state. This is who you really are, Buddha says. You haven't been it once and you've lost it, but this is what our potential is. He's found this. Then this is called Buddha, rid of all the rubbish, full of all the goodness. Your mind pervades the universe. How can it not? It's not physical. No longer confined by space or time or matter. How can it be? Infinitely wise, sees that which exists. Infinitely compassionate. It's not the definition of God. I think I mentioned this. I mention it all the time. I'll say it here too. A few years ago in Melbourne, I was asked to give a talk at the Catholic University, some conference. I had a 20-minute slot, you know. And I had no idea what to talk about until I got there that morning, so I was a bit desperate. So I got my iPad and looked up Merriam-Webster dictionary for the definition of God. And it said 3 qualities: infinite wisdom, infinite power, infinite compassion. I thought, well, that's interesting. That's the same characteristic of a Buddha. So this is what I like to say too. Over the years, I mentioned this yesterday, so many humans have done marvellous work of looking into the meaning of life. Look at the Australian Aboriginals. It's an incredibly sophisticated view of the universe they've developed until the white people came along and messed things up. Then you got all the American Indians, all their views, everywhere you look, say centuries and centuries of thinkers, humans over the world, all coming up with different views about reality. How marvellous, you know. How dare we criticise any of them? Some might be a bit stupid. That's okay. We'll look into them, you know. So here we have, you know, I forget where I was now. I lost track. Now that time I lost track. What was I talking about? What was my train of thought there? The views of the universe, Catholics. Oh yeah, Catholic University. Thank you. So anyway, I had to give this talk. So I looked up, I thought, okay, my talk will be the similarities between the definition of a God, creator, and the definition of Buddha. And that is the thing. Lama Zopa often says, Lama Yeshe, that actually the concept of God, all pervasive, all knowing, all compassionate, all wise, that's the same concept of Buddha. The difference is the Christians say there's only one and it's permanent and he creates everything else. The Buddhists say, no, don't need that because we're all beginningless. And we have that potential. Every one of us has that potential to become perfected. So, of course, for Christians, that's a bit shocking. And the Hindus, for the Muslims, that's very arrogant to say that. But that's Buddha's finding. So the qualities are the same, but not creator. Don't need creating. We create ourselves. So there's many fundamental differences. Certainly when it comes to the teachings on emptiness, the way that energy exists. But the qualities are possible. So anyway, that's the Buddha. So, but you have got, so you don't need a body. The actual Buddha is the pure unmanifest consciousness. But then Buddha, out of compassion, that mind, manifests in bodies to help people like you and me. We can't communicate with subtle consciousness. So there's 2 kinds of bodies. One body is one that looks like you and me. And that's the one like Shakyamuni, the human being of 2,500 years ago. Then in the Vajrayana, more advanced level, you've got, and this is where all these pictures and strange looking ladies and gentlemen are all depicted. There's the Vajrayana, the main Buddha there. It's in the Bodhisattva aspect, and it's in the sort of more gorgeous, blissful aspect, a whole different discussion. And they're all these pictures of like Tara, thousands of them. But there's one of those, and he's called Vajradhara. It's like the tantric aspect of the same Buddha. He's dressed up this way, here looking like a human and looking like a monk, and here looking like something else. And they both represent different things. So if you look at the Shakyamuni Buddha's face and body, you can tell what it refers to, that level of practice, subdue your body, speech, and mind. He's a manifestation of disciplined body, speech, and mind. In Tantra, it's another whole discussion, philosophically and everything. There's no need to go into that here too much. So there's Vajradhara. He's dressed up in kind of gorgeous, looking beautiful and young and beautiful with jewelry, like a more of the Indian royal aspect. And it represents, so there's the tantric aspect of Buddha. And under him, you've got the 5 Buddha families. And each of those represents different, essentially in Tantra, it's like not just do the Buddha now represent qualities you're trying to cultivate, but they also represent qualities you're trying to purify. So Amitabha, for example, is one of the Buddha families, and he's the manifestation of purified attachment. Akshobhya, he's a manifestation of purified anger. Each of them is a manifestation of purified delusions, because in Tantra, the most sophisticated psychology, even all the delusions can be used and transformed on your path to enlightenment, you know. So each of these Buddhas, and under each of those 5, all the other thousands of Buddhas. So so His Holiness is about to give us mantras, and mantras are basically the sound representation of those Buddhas. So one lot of them is, like I said before, Buddha has 3 essential qualities: wisdom, compassion, and that third one's called power. So it's the compassion, because they're no longer a separate sense of self, to only benefit others. Infinite empathy with every being as if they were you. There's no separation. Infinite compassion. But that's not enough. You need the wisdom to know how to benefit. That's the wisdom wing and compassion wing. And the third one, you need the compassion to want to benefit, the wisdom to know how, but the third one is the power to do so. So the 3 Buddhas there, and His Holiness was going to give those 3 last night, Chen Reizig or Avalokitesvara, that's compassion. Wisdom, he didn't give us that one. Sorry, he didn't give us that one. He wasn't going to. Manjushri, Manju, gentle voice. Wisdom, he's got a sword cutting through ignorance. And the third one, power, is often depicted as Tara. He was going to give us Tara, green Tara, female Buddha. She represents power, action, success, cut through the obstacles, make things happen, get things done. So we need compassion to want to benefit. We've got to have wisdom that knows how, and we have to have the ability to do it. That's the essence of the energy of a Buddha. So so 3 examples. There are 3 of the Buddha's example. There are thousands of these Buddhas. So last night, His Holiness. So, okay, just to finish about speech. In the first level of practice, control your negative speech, thus purifying yourself. Be silent. Silence is very powerful, just to quiet, you know. And then when you get to compassion level, you at least say words that are useful to others. And at the tantric level, it's the most advanced. And here, mantras are said to be super powerful. It's the purest of sound. And just by saying mantra, you purify your speech. You can heal yourself. So if negative speech can pollute your wind energies and cause future sickness, then logically being silent and not saying bad speech already can help purify you. But even more radically, by saying mantra, which is so potent and related to those different Buddhas, that can purify your wind energy, which in turn purifies your mind, which can help heal you. And that's why you can use your hands to heal others. You know, it's logical, it fits. So mantra are very powerful, and they're a great practice. When you're despairing, when you're freaking out, when you can't control your mind, don't worry about it. Just add a mantra on top. Don't think you've got to be holy before you say a mantra. It's almost like the opposite. When you're miserable is the time to say a mantra, you know, because it's like atomic bomb on the rubbish, and it's like cooling your crazy mind. You mightn't feel it immediately. You don't have to feel compassion. Just say, oh, money, baby, money, baby, say it, you know. Can we mute, please? Mute again, Andrew. Are we communicating so far? Okay. So any questions in general, and then we'll go to the mantras about what I just said. I said a few things there. Any questions in general? People, sweethearts, about what I've talked about.
Wes, did you have a question you wanted Venerable Robina to repeat or clarify?
No.
Yeah, please.
And then Barbara does. So Barbara does, Wes does, yeah. Go on then.
Venerable Robina, you mentioned Manjushri, Tara, and Chenrez, and you kind of associated them with different aspects, and I just missed that part.
Okay. So Chenrezig or Avalokitesvara is compassion. And His Holiness was going to give that last night, and we'll do that one now. Manjushri. Listen, Michelle, you keep popping up. If you're being confused. That's it. There you go, Michelle. Talk to you later. So Wes, there's Michelle still. What happened to Wes? Unmute yourself, Wes.
I'm still here.
Okay, good. Okay, so Manju, Sanskrit, gentle voice. Jamyang in Tibetan, and Shri is like Lord. He's the Buddha of wisdom. He's orange. He's holding a sword aloft in his right hand with a tip of fire, and it cuts through ignorance. His Holiness didn't say that, but it's a really nice one. We might do that anyway. It's a nice one to talk about. I'll explain. Then you've got the third one is Tara, and that's representing the action, energy, power, success one. She's often Vajrapani, a wrathful blue male Buddha is the one that they use to depict the third component of a Buddha, power. But Tara is one of those as well. Okay, those three. Good, thanks, Wes. Anyone else? Michelle, did you have something to say? No. Someone else? Any other questions? Yes, Barbara. Yes, darling. Alfred and Barbara want to talk. Okay, Alfred, you go next. Don't worry, your light's on. Talk to me, Alfred.
Okay, great. Well, one of my questions was about Vajrapani actually, because I saw in Mitzvah prayer, it says Vajrapani and not Tara, but I think you already explained it. But the other question is mind only linked to wind element, or is it linked to our 4 elements?
No, of course it is linked to all 4, but the subtlest one, because all the 4 elements subsume to the wind energy. That's the subtlest, the most pervasive. So the subtle wind energy is coursing through these 72,000 subtle channels, inextricably linked to the mind. And the other elements manifest from that.
Oh, okay, got it. That's what you explained about the death process.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. What else, people? Anything else? Barbara, talk to me, sweetheart. You talk to me, Barbara.
Yes, I have a question with the mantras.
Yeah.
I know that they are words in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
I don't know what they mean. Is that significant or not?
You get commentaries on them if you want to, but the real point here, Barbara, if you just, okay, we're going to go through them, is to understand the energy they represent. So one represents compassion, one represents power, one represents wisdom, one is for purification. So that's the broader meaning, and that's enough. But when you study it deeply, you can then learn, because they've got various levels of meaning. I went to one weekend course, 8 hours of teachings, and it was a commentary simply on Om Mani Padme Hum, and it was 8 hours of teachings on the meaning of it. I mean, excuse me, so there's levels and levels and levels and levels of meaning. Each one of them can represent the entire path to enlightenment. So the simplest level, the most essential for us to understand and to buy into, is the Buddha they represent. So the energy of Tara, Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha, because you're buying into that meaning, that's what the meaning becomes for you.
Okay.
Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, who's that?
It's Whitney. I have a question.
Okay, sweetheart.
You mentioned early on in your talk that the 4 elements are inextricably linked to the mind.
Yes.
And I don't understand how that's not just a belief. How do we do that?
We have to unpack this, Whitney. Einstein tells you that E equals mc squared. Oh, but I can't think that's anything but a belief, you just say. So why would you not say that there? I can't hear you.
Sorry.
This is a really good point. Let's just persevere through it. You would not say that about Einstein equals mc squared, would you? You wouldn't say that, would you? It's just a belief.
No.
Why not?
No.
Why?
Because it's physics or math, and you can go through the steps of the.
Yeah. So what makes you think you can't go through these steps I'm just describing here?
I'm just wondering if you could direct me to where I could find the steps, because I don't get it.
The whole path of Buddhism. But Whitney, I see what you're saying, but this is the whole path we're describing here. This is the point. This is the whole point I'm making. It's a really good point, but it's the whole point I'm making here. All I'm doing here is I'm talking a bit of low-level math. But you know the big picture is this math, if you trust it, you've got to look into that, is coming from this entire big picture, this entire body of knowledge. And it's all there, and there are people out there who've gone through it, have observed it, and have shown it, and have proven it. And so that's the steps that we're going through here. So that's up to you if you want to engage in the whole thing, and you will eventually prove it. And this is what I said before. If this body of knowledge we're describing here called Buddhism is valid, if it is, it first has to be coherent theoretically. But how are you going to find out except if you do it? There's no shortcut. See, what I find very fascinating, I mean, you might or might not have proven Einstein, I don't know. But let's say you're like me and you haven't. But our thing in the West is, I think we're a bit lazy. I'm not saying you here, but I think it's a general view we have. We hear that someone has proven E equals MC squared. And that's good enough for us. Oh, it's been proved, we say. But then But we assume Buddhahood hasn't been proved. That's because we have this default view of religion that you can't prove it. And it's not coming from a valid system. We just think it's a belief. That's why we have these questions. So we've got to change our very assumption. Buddhism might not be coherent. It might be a load of rubbish. It might be made up. But that's, who do you think is going to have to prove it? No one but you. Nobody but you, Whitney.
I guess what I'm asking is, if I were to question E equals MC squared, my teacher would say, learn math, then learn algebra,
yes, that's
then,
right.
learn physics, then learn
That's
blah, blah,
right.
blah.
Exactly.
So are you saying that as I go through the steps of learning, it will become clear a little later when I have more knowledge?
That, if it's not that, it's superstition. If it is nothing other than that, it is superstition. The way to become a Buddha is exactly the same. And that's what being a Buddhist means. You start at junior school and you look at the instructions, you follow the steps. Then you go to high school, then you go to university and you learn all the knowledge. You have all the knowledge. You can learn all the knowledge. You can learn all the theories. And then you have to experience the truth of them finally in your own mind in the depths of subtle meditation. That's where finally the proof of the pudding is, when you've got subtle mind and you can you have direct experience of all these theories. It's the same principle. Makes sense, Whitney? Perfect question. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Was someone on?
Which is the best mantra for purification?
Sasha, darling, there's many of them, but there's one that we do that's a longish one. Perhaps you're familiar with it. It's called the Vajrasattva mantra.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Uh-huh.
That's the one that's said to be really powerful, darling.
Okay.
That comes along with a practice, and that was what I put in the notes yesterday. When we did yesterday, did we? Oh, we did. No, we went through the process yesterday, and the new set of notes that Andrew sent you last night, I think, included teachings on the purification practice, 2 extra chapters in your course notes, and the actual practice itself. It's all in there.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. I read them, and I also did the Lama Zopas, you know.
Yes, exactly. Perfect, darling, perfect.
And the Liberating Sakya, and I found them very powerful.
There you go. Wonderful. Very nice. Perfect, darling.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Sasha.
I have a question.
Yes, Ginger?
Going off what Whitney just said, I'm confused about, you said don't reinvent the wheel, don't figure out how to make a cake because it takes too long, versus knowing what the Buddha knows. How do...
No, not versus. No, they're not the options. They're not the options. They're not the options. When I wanted to make a cake, you know, if I'm going to be a smarty pants, I think I'm not going to ask anybody else. I'm going to come to the conclusion. I'm going to come to the knowledge myself. Well, I think I'd have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on all sorts of experiments and research, whereas the easier one is go to somebody who knows how to do it. A knowledge holder in Tibetan, a lovely word, rigsin. And I went to my mum. So I checked on her. I didn't just believe she knew it. I knew. I tasted her cakes. I tasted her sister's cakes, my sister's cakes, her students. Her peers said she was a good cake maker. That's how you check up on the Buddha. That's how you check up on a teacher. And then you get some inferential confidence that person is valid. And then you ask them to show you the recipe. And then you make it your experience. That surely is the quickest way to learn something. That's what we're discussing here. So we're taking here, what's your doubt? Good, you look doubtful. What's your doubt? Keep talking, it's perfect. Can't hear you. You're gone, your noise is gone.
Hi, I'm sorry, Venerable Robina. I didn't know you were talking to me. I didn't understand what you said. I kind of have trouble processing sometimes.
Of course, I talk fast. So tell me what you understand.
I guess in my mind, there's 2 separate camps, and I can't unite them in that you go to a knowledge holder and you learn, But you have to make assumptions if you're just going to believe what they're saying. If you
Yes.
can't
Right.
exactly.
Exactly. So have you ever learned anything? No, I hear what you're saying. Have you ever learned anything at all? What have you, give us an example of something you've learned to do.
Something I've learned to do, change a baby's diaper.
No, keep it something a little bit more. Even that's good enough example. Have you learned any sort of small body of knowledge? You learn mathematics. You learn how to count, right?
Yes, I can count.
Okay. Now, remember the time when you first learned. You're probably at school, and your teacher. Now, the thing is, your teacher told you that 1 + 1 was 2, didn't she?
Yes.
You'd never heard that before, had you?
No.
That was brand new information for you. So, what did you have to do with that information? You have to believe her first, didn't you?
Right.
Now, if you'd had we didn't choose our teachers when we were 5, but let's hope our mummies did do their research and they checked that a teacher was valid because she had a good reputation, that school had had them before, the other parents were happy with that teacher. So you don't just believe that a person will teach you because they can tell you anything, but this is why you've got to check up first who the knowledge holder is. So let's assume your mother did the research and she was confident that if she sent you to that school, you'd be learning valid knowledge. So you've got to take that first. You've got to check and have confidence in the teacher first. The moment she first tells you 1 + 1 is 2, you have no choice but to believe her, do you?
Right, yes.
But the belief is based on intelligence, at least your mum's in this case. So then what would you do with it?
What would I do with the 1 + 1 = 2 knowledge?
What would you do with it, yeah?
Build on it to do division or...
No. You'd have to prove it first.
Oh.
Do your homework, don't you?
By manipulating objects.
She says, go home and do your homework, Ginger. And I want you, basically what she's saying to you, like as if she was a Buddhist, I want you to go home and I want you to get insight into the truth of this. So you've got to go and make it your experience. You know the theory, you've written it down, but you don't get it yet. But you make it your experience by thinking it through. And you go, oh, mummy, I get it. That's an insight. That's how you learn everything, Ginger. All the way to Einstein or Buddhahood, no difference. One step at a time. So that's why you've got to check first if the teacher is valid. Otherwise, we believe anything anyone tells us, and we allow ourselves to get led up garden paths, and then we sue them. But we didn't check up first. You see what I'm saying? You've got to have belief first, but it's based on intelligence, and you're checking, and you're confident that person's valid, and you've proven it to yourself. Okay. Then you start with, and then you prove it yourself. Now, if you can go home and prove that 1 + 1 isn't 2, then I'm glad you found out. Now you can chuck that teacher out and get a good teacher. You see my point? But we don't think it through like this. We take it all for granted, this process. You understand? Now, do you understand? Does it make sense?
I understand you have to have belief first. I cannot do the whole learning of Einstein or Buddha.
Sorry, what?
I'm concerned about the level I can achieve because I'm not Buddha or Einstein, and they spent their whole lifetime now and previous to get where they are.
Well, where do you think what you've done to get where you are, Ginger? You think you're different?
No, it's no different. I just feel
okay. You're talking about low self-esteem, Ginger.
Yes.
This is where you've got to learn. It's a really good point. We all feel it. But this is what the point is. You know, if you watch the tennis. No, forget tennis. If you listen to your teacher tell you 1 + 1 is 2, and you know it's called math, and then you see the kids in grade 6, and you see they know so much more, and you go, wow, I don't know that yet. But guess what? I've got the stages to go through. I've got grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. I've got all the books that they learned. If they can do it, so can I. Same logic.
Okay.
You see my point?
Yes.
It's logical, Ginger. We've got the work to do, but all the system, the method. It's not as if Einstein, after he found his research, then he went and burned it all and kept it to himself. He's put it out there. Buddha the same. If Buddha can do it, baby, so can you. Yes, it'll take time, but you get courage from that. If they can do it, and if the map is lost, then I agree with you. But if the system is there, the instructions are there, and and forget Buddha from 2,500 years ago. If we've got examples now. I mean, look at the Dalai Lama. I think if anybody wants to give you confidence that he can do it, we can do it too. Then we go one step at a time, Ginger, one step at a time. This is a powerful point. And this is what I was trying to say to Sasha yesterday. She's suddenly met a person what's called a teacher. She suddenly now has got big doubts because she's seen some behavior that looks shocking. And will I ask him? Will I do this? I kept trying to point out, there's no benefit if we don't have internally some methods for working out our own process of how we even begin to trust another person, then we have work to do. This was the point I was trying to make. Sasha has the work to do in her own mind so she can have confidence that when she does check on this teacher, she's got a basis in her own mind for having confidence. And if she hasn't got it, keep away from him until she is certain. We've got to do the work internally first, then we can start to move forward. It's a really good point, Ginger. Thank you. Who else? Brian had something. Yes, Brian. Did you have something, Brian? I thought I saw your name pop up. Okay. So let's now do the mantras. Can we have the mantras up now, Andrew? Okay. So the very first one His Holiness said is, how do I make my thing go over here? How do I make it go down? No good. View options, exit full screen. I'm getting confused now. I've lost my things. This will do. Okay, fine. So now we have, the first one is Shakyamuni Buddha. Now, some of you might know it already, and you will know, if you look at the next one, Medicine Buddha, there's a word called Tayata. I don't think I spelled it properly there, doesn't matter. That often comes before the mantra in Shakyamuni, but His Holiness didn't give it that way, so we will do it the way His Holiness would say it. So I will you just repeat it after, if you'd like to I'm not His Holiness, I'm so sorry, but I can at least give it to you. And I've got it from His Holiness before. I've got it from the Holy Being. So maybe some of their blessings will come through me. And if you'd like to have it, this is called an oral transmission, which His Holiness is going to give us. So just repeat it after me if you'd like to. Om, Muni, Muni, Maha, Munaye, Muna. And that's really wrong spelling, and please forgive me. Oh dear, I better send a new one to Andrew and he will send you the new one. It's Munaye. It's M-U-N-A-Y, Munaye. So Soha. So there's different things here just to explain to you. Sometimes you'll read the mantra, this last bit, it says Svaha. There's originals, this is all Sanskrit, but over the centuries, the Tibetans have developed their own pronunciation. So for whatever reason, Svaha has become Soha. So often they say the best way to say the mantra is the way you've heard it from His Holiness, from him, for example, or from your teacher. So I'm saying it the way he would have said it. He said Soha. So say it again after me. Om, Muni, Muni, Maha, Munaye, Soha. Om, Muni, Muni, Maha, Munaye, Soha. So now we'll do it together and then we'll chant it. There's a nice tune. We'll just say it together now. Om Muni Muni Maha Munaye Soha. 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 Okay, now the next one is Medicine Buddha. So Shakyamuni, as you know, that's the Buddha, the monk in a golden light body sitting on his throne, and then you're going to visualize him. If you like, even visualize blessings coming. You do it as a little meditation if you want. The next one's Medicine Buddha, and he looks just the same as regular Buddha, but he's got a dark blue body. So his mantra, this is the sort of the way Tibetans pronounce it. As you see halfway down, one of the syllables is in square brackets because you can say it twice, but His Holiness, I've noticed, says it once, so we'll do it like he does it. So say after me, Tayata, Om, Bekanze, Bekanze, Maha, Bekanze, Ranza, Samungate, Soha. Tayata, Om, Bekanze, Bekanze, Maha, Bekanze, Ranza, Samungate, Soha. Tayata, Om, Bekanze, Bekanze, Maha, Bekanze, Ranza, Samungate, Soha. Tayata Om Bekanze Bekanze Maha Bekanze Ranza Samungate Soha. These mantras you can just chant in sort of like rap. You just chant in a very relaxed way, not sort of like just relaxed. Any way you like, you know. Tayata om bekanze maha bekanze be ranza samun gate soha. Tayata om bekanze maha bekanze ranza samun gate soha. Tayata om bekanze maha bekanze ranza samun gate soha. Tayata om bekanze maha bekanze ranza samun gate soha. Tayata om bekanze maha bekanze ranza samun gate soha. Tayata om bekanze maha bekanze ranza samun gate soha. This next one, Chenrezig, or Avalokitesvara in Sanskrit, compassionate-eyed one, it means, you know. And as His Holiness said, the deity, or just Buddha of compassion, and the patron deity, or Buddha of Tibet. They love him. And of course, all the Tibetans see His Holiness as a human manifestation of this Buddha. Om Mani Padme. The D is slightly soft. Om Mani Padme. You're going to get this in the email. Andrew's going to send you this whole sheet. Barbara, Andrew's going to send you this whole sheet. I'll rectify it and he'll give it to you. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 There's different tunes too. Well, I'll sing one of the tunes. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Okay, this next one. It's called in Tibetan, often they're referred to as Midsema. It's a longer, coming from a shortened Tibetan phrase. But it's the name mantra, as Holiness called it, name praise, the 4-line prayer. Well, I've done the 5 lines. And each of these, as you'll see, it's like it's seeing basically, it's seeing Tsongkhapa, who's the lineage Lama of our Gelug tradition from the 14th century. And just this work, the series of lines represent, he's seen as a manifestation of Avalokitesvara, Manjushri, Vajrapani, and this is Tsongkhapa. He's the manifestation of these 3. But for some reason, they've gotten to the habit of just doing 4 lines and they miss out the middle one. They just put compassion and wisdom, sometimes, whatever the reason. So we'll do the 4 because His Holiness said that. And we'll just do the 5 one because it's there. But I'll do the one His Holiness is going to do. So we do the first 2 lines and the last 2. So you just say them one time after me, and then we'll repeat it together. Migme Tsewe, Techen Chenrezig, Drime Kienpe, Wangpo, Jumpe Yang. Then skip a line. Gangchen, Kepe, Tsugyen, Tsongkhapa, Lozang, Jagpe, Jabla, Solwadeb. So I'll say, we'll do 3 times. Migme Tsewe, Techen, Chenrezig, Drime, Kenpe, Wangpo, Jumpe Yang. Dupong, Malu, Jomtse, Sangwe Dag. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that one. We've said it now, it's too late. Gangchen, Kepe, Tsugyen, Tsongkhapa, Lozang, Dragpe, Jabla, Solwadeb. One more time. Migme, Tsewe, Techen, Chenrezig, Drime, Kenpe, Wangpo, Jumpe Yang. Dupong, Malu, Jomtse, Sangwe Dag, Ganchen, Kepe, Tsugyen, Tsongkhapa, Lozang, Dragpe, Jabla, Solwadeb. So as you see in English, it's Avalokitesvara, Chenrezig, Buddha of compassion, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion. That means compassion that is dependent arising. Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom. Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire host of Maras, meaning all the obstacles. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snow. To Lozang Dragpa. That's his his actual name. Lozang Dragpa. At your feet, I make requests. So that's called the Midsema. That's one, Galupa's, our prayer, of our lineage Lama. He's like our patron saint. Next one. So this is the mantra of Padmasambhava, who's in the 7th century, 8th century. So there's something, His Holiness said these words. I'll explain. But at the end, okay, I'll show you. When Buddhism was first established in Tibet, it was done through the help of Padmasambhava, together with Shantarakshita and the Tibetan king Songtsen Gampo, who were known as the Ken Lob Chur. Ken, abbot, for Shantarakshita. Lob, meaning master, for Padmasambhava, and Chur, for the Dharma king. But actually, the translator said he said another name, Trisang Jetsen, which is a later king, but he meant Songtsen Gyampo, like he said first. Okay, so this is the mantra of Padmasambhava. Often they refer to him as Guru Rinpoche, precious guru. And Lama is just the equivalent of the word guru. And guru just means heavy with qualities. It's a lovely meaning. And Lama, actually, sort of like high, the Tibetan equivalent. So, okay, we just do together. He didn't say this one, and I don't say this one too often. I do another one, but this is one I think I just got. This is a typical one. I think I'm pretty sure it's right. Om Ahum Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum. Om Ahum Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum. Often Tibetans say Peme for the Padma. It's more like Peme, lotus. Om Ahum Vajra Guru Pema Siddhi Hum. 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 And now we have Tara. Next page, Andrew. Thank you so much. Arya Tara or green Tara. Arya means superior, that's all. Tara is meaning liberator. Often she's referred to as the liberator from the fears of samsara. She gives us courage and confidence and optimism to cut through the nonsense. And yeah, so, I did the wrong mantra. Oh my God, you must not do this one. I'll have to send Andrew a new one. And if you receive one from Andrew, throw it out. This is wrong, I did the wrong thing. So you just have to repeat it after me and you'll get it written down later. This is a Chen raising mantra. I forgot to put the new one in. So sorry. So you have to say it after me and then I'll send you the new version. Om, thank you. Om, Tare, Tutare, Ture, Soha. Om, Tare, Tutare, Ture, Soha. Om, Tare, Tutare, Ture, Soha. So what I'll do, I'll send you another document. And recently I did helping someone with a project. I had a Tibetan calligrapher do these mantras in Tibetan. So I've got all these ones. So I'll send you some of them. It's very lovely to have the Tibetan as well. So I'll send you a new document. Don't send a new one, Andrew, until I've done it, okay? So there you go. That's what His Holiness would have given us last night. So we have any questions? Nearly time to go home. Look at it, 10 to 20. Oh my God. Any questions?
Just say something about Padmasambhava and Guru Rinpoche.
Sure, darling, absolutely. So Padmasambhava is like 7th, 8th century, and he's Indian, an amazing, great tantric yogi and scholar, amazing being. And he went to Tibet, and at the same time as Shantarakshita, this king, and then this Songtsen Gampo, the king, and Shantarakshita, the abbot. And it was the beginning. All those three, they're the ones who really brought Buddhism and began to entrench it in Tibet. There's this lovely story. Lama Zopa tells this story. Actually, I'll tell you the story. Michelle tells this wonderful story. I'll get the story. I forget all the details. Never mind that. Yeah, no, it's a nice story. I'll tell you the story. Hang on. I'll try and remember it. Okay, there's this story. It's kind of well known, but all these stories, the Lamas tell them and get different variations every time. It's never written down. It's oral lineage. So there's the Bodha Stupa, the stupa in Bodhanath, if you've been there in Kathmandu, this marvelous big dome, ancient, it's very old. I don't know, people never quite know, but it's probably 1,500, 2,000 years. I don't know how old. It's quite old. And there's a story about how it was first built. This one old lady, one old mummy who had chickens, and she wanted to build a stupa. So it's such a wonderful story. I have to find you the story. Hang on. It's such a sweet story.
What's the purpose of the Padmasambhava mantra? Like, is it for the medicine Buddhas for healing?
I understand. I'll talk about it. Let me just tell you the story first. Thanks, Sasha. I'll tell you. Hang on. I won't be long. I want to tell you this story. Okay, here we go. Teachings. Okay. Oh, it's not good. It's not the one. Prayers, no. Prayer book, no. Teachings book. What's going on? Oh, this is the one, yeah. Okay, so there's this wonderful story. Where is it? I'll find it. All right. This story, so Bodhistupa is important. It's incredibly inspiring, Michelle says. Hearing it, you'll really understand the benefits of circumambulating it, cleaning it, sweeping it the whole day and night. The stupa was built by a mother, a woman, Jatsima, who looked after her chickens. Her family was extremely poor, I think. So she wanted to build a stupa very, very much. And so she asked the king of Nepal for permission to get the land. So normally the king wouldn't give permission, but somehow, maybe due to her karma, the king said, okay, it can be done. This just slipped out of his mouth. So this is why the Tibetans all call it Jarong Kashor Choten stupa, which means it can be done. That's how the Tibetans refer to that stupa. That's so sweet. Kashor is slipped out of the mouth, and Choten is stupa. That's wonderful. So anyway, that's the name of the Bodhi stupa. The mother passed away after she completed up to the vase, it's a big dome-like structure. She had 4 sons, and they completed the rest of the stupa. After they finished it, they all stood up in front of it and made prayers. Everyone generated a wish. When they were praying, see, all this stuff is when you think this is all like science fiction. This is when it sounds like religion, Whitney. You think, God Almighty, how can I prove all this rubbish? Never mind, the stories are lovely. Take them with a grain of salt if you like. Her 4 sons, and they all completed. So after they finished it, they all stood up in front of it and made prayers. Everyone generated a wish. And when they were praying, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas absorbed into the stupa, which is why the name of the stupa is also all-encompassing. Anyway, it's also called wish fulfilling. Why wish fulfilling? Because it is so powerful that anybody who makes prayers to the stupa, their wishes are fulfilled, especially when you see the stupa for the first time. Anyway, when the brothers were standing in front of the stupa, the oldest brother made a prayer. May I become a Dharma king in Tibet, the snowland. And the next brother heard his prayer and said, may I become a minister to help him spread the Dharma. And the next son said, may I be an abbot to pass on the lineage of ordination in Tibet. So after the next one made a prayer, may I become a powerful yogi when there are obstacles to spreading Dharma in Tibet. In the next life then, the oldest brother became a Dharma king, Songtsen Gampo, that king, His Holiness mentioned, the Dharma king who had 2 queens who had brought the statues of Shakyamuni Buddha with them to Tibet, one in the Jokang and the other one at the Ramoshe, 2 big temples in Tibet. He did great activities to benefit all sentient beings, and I think he also helped to build up the Joksikang. The second brother, he became a minister in Tibet, Padma Gungsen. He doesn't get mentioned by His Holiness. The third brother became Shantarakshita, His Holiness mentioned. This is the abbot. And the fourth became Padmasambhava. So when they were building the first monastery in central Tibet, Samye, during the day, the people would build, and then at night, spirits would tear it down. One of the ministers suggested that they invite Padmasambhava from India. When he came, he manifested as a Buddha, and he called, I think, controlling the 3 realms. This Buddha hooked the spirits and subdued them, making them pledge to become Dharma protectors. So they stayed around him on the mountain to protect the Dharma in Tibet. Therefore, Mahayana Buddhism in Tibet has spread and been preserved for many years, and so many beings have actualized the path and become enlightened. And because of this, Tibetan Mahayana Buddhism has spread all over the world. Even in the West, many tens of thousands of people every year are able to follow the path to enlightenment and able to make their lives meaningful and to find peace and happiness, including us. We have the chance to practice the Lam Rim, to do purification every day, becoming closer and closer to liberation from samsara and to enlightenment by realizing the 3 principal aspects of the path to enlightenment, and on top of that, the tantric stages that allow us to achieve enlightenment quickly. All these opportunities that we and many others have in everyday life, all this benefit comes from the Bodhistupa. That's a nice story about Padmasambhava. So he's this great yogi. And the point is, though, as you see in that thing, you'll see it when you get the piece of paper, Sasha, this is his name mantra. So his name is in there, lotus. Padmasambhava, meaning, let's get the mantra again. Where is it? No, I can't find my document. Mantras, here we go. So there's name mantras. All our gurus have name mantras. So for example, so this one, Omar Hung, just they're 3 Sanskrit syllables. They're the essence of all the Tibetan, the Sanskrit alphabet actually. Then Vajra, Guru, Padma Siddhi Hung. So Padma means lotus, and Padma is the same up in his name. There's Sambhava, lotus in the something or other. It means. So it's his name mantra. It's his name. And so the point is, if we understand karma, that every word we say programs our mind. So if you sit there saying angry words every day, don't be surprised you turn yourself into a horrible person. But if you sit there saying loving words every day, don't be surprised you turn yourself into a nice person. So if you say these names of these Buddhas, and if you're a Lama and you say their name mantra, it just simply obviously brings you closer to them, makes you want to become like them, helps you become like them. That's the purpose, Sasha. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Good, darling.
That mantra, Chagda Tulku Rinpoche used to chant it a lot.
There you go, darling. There you go. Perfect, perfect, sweetheart. So any questions about all these things? Anybody else? Lorna and who else? Lorna and who? Who else?
Dana.
And Regina and Lorna. Okay, good. Regina, you go first. Sorry, Lorna. Hang on. Regina, turn your mute off, sweetheart. Unmute yourself, Regina.
Well, hi. My nickname is Ginny.
Ginny, okay, darling, yes.
What I'd like to ask is, some teachers say that you should only say mantras in the context of a puja, and others say you can just say mantras all the time. What would your advice be on that?
I've never heard the first one ever. I've never heard that instruction from anybody ever, ever, ever. So I can only say I've never heard that first one. So if you have heard it, you need to be confident who your source was, and that you're confident that they're valid. Because, I mean, things can float around. They say this, they say that. But I must say I've never heard that said anywhere.
Okay.
So what I've understood is you can say them as much and as often as you like, of course. Now, there are some mantras of the highest in Tantra. There are some level of the practices that you can't say unless you've received a particular empowerment. But others, if you learn them and you give them permission, and you especially if you receive the oral transmission, let's say from His Holiness, that gives it nice power. That's wonderful. As much as you like, you say them.
Okay, thank you so much. That's
good. Thanks, Ginny. Thanks, sweetheart. Who else? Go on now. It's Lorna. Yes, Lorna.
I think you just answered my question. I was going to ask how many times you repeat a specific mantra.
As much as you like, as much as you like. Many times you take a practice. If you take, for example, there's one that we mentioned, the purification practice. It's in your course notes from yesterday. The particular practice of the Buddha in the third step where you visualize the Buddha and you recite his mantra, it's very traditional that one does a retreat of that. And the way they measure the length of your retreat is often in terms of the number of mantras. So often there's a commitment to do 100,000 of that mantra. And so to do a retreat of that, you'd be very specific. You not lock yourself, but you need to, when you do a retreat, you take the empowerment and then you commit to do 100,000 and you do 4 sessions a day and you try not to break it the whole way. Then you keep the commitment and then you do your mantra and it's got certain power. That's how they talk. But in general, you say it often as much as you like.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lauren.
Venerable Robina, I have a question.
Yes, Greg.
When we're doing my center does the Medicine Buddha Puja every week, and there's this section in it that talks about, to be our protectors in degenerate times. What does that phrase mean, degenerate times?
Okay, that's a good point. If we take, again, the Buddhist view, which indeed we have to prove with me, of course. This is not fitting in our world, though. It's beginningless and endless, which straight away you say the world is beginningless and endless. It's beyond hilarious. We could get very depressed, in fact, because we have a very strong, I'm going to turn you off now, Greg. I'm not turning you off, but I'm going to answer your question. And as usual, I'm going to add a few things. Okay, so.
I can't hear you.
There's no sound.
I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so, the idea of beginningless is a very weird, bizarre, kind of like it blows our minds. Why? Is because we all assume beginning. But the Buddha would say, what a silly idea. How can you have a beginning? A beginning means an absolute Big Bang beginning, before which there was nothing. This simply is not tenable. It is not viable. It is not possible. The Buddha's view is very simple. Everything exists according to the law of cause and effect. It's a chicken and egg idea. Everything exists according to the law of cause and effect. So we know very well this moment of anything, has to have come first and foremost from the millisecond of that thing before. And that had its main source in the millisecond before. And that had its source in the millisecond before. You could track it back in terms of millions of seconds of that energy. And we're going to track it back and back and back and back and back. Now, instinctively, we feel we can find the first Big Bang of the universe. Instinctively, we feel we can find where did I begin, you know? So in Western, clearly in materialist model, this package called I was when the egg and the sperm came together and began to multiply. That's when I began, you know, and that's fine. We did. But the Buddha first misses out a component. You're missing out the mind. And then, but you got to track the mind back to something, and you got to track the egg back to something, and you got to track the sperm back to something. And so, of course, we don't factor in the mind, so we just track back the egg and sperm. We go back to the monkeys. We're still trying to find the missing link. That's just for the body. But for the mind, and even indeed for the body, and indeed for the universe, in all those wonderful discussions that His Holiness has with the scientists, I remember one time, like it was anecdotal, he said one time, Big Bang, no problem. Just not the first Big Bang, that's all. Meaning the Buddha's view is logically, if you've got cause and effect, you go back, this second of me, do it as a rigorous meditation, I tell you. This second of me, where did it come from? The millisecond before that. And if you had an unbroken chain of mental moments, if you remember perfectly, you get back to the first second of conception. Then you've got to track back the consciousness, because that's the continuity of you. Egg and sperm of mummy and daddy have got nothing to do with you until they hit your mind. They're just their mummies and daddy's egg and sperm, not you. You're the mind. So you track that mind to a previous second, and then a few weeks before that was in a previous body, and then before that, and before that. And of course, we keep going back, hoping we'll sort of uncover the first one. But if you get back 40 trillion years, even before this planet, if you track back all the mummies and daddies and all your consciousness going back and back and back, you get back before this planet. And then you keep going, and we keep thinking we'll find the first moment. But if you go back even 60 trillion years and you stop and say, that's the first moment. No, where did that moment come from? It can only come from a previous moment. You can never have a first moment. Logically, therefore, matter, the four elements, and minds, these are the components of all universes, are beginningless. It's shocking to us, but it's not that complicated as a concept. It's only because it disagrees with what we believe already, that's all. Given that, time is beginningless. Universes are beginningless. So at the moment in time, so then again, this is again blows our mind to think this. We think humans were the only time on this planet, and so far we track ourselves back to a few million years, and we were monkeys at some point. And we're trying to find where we began. What was the piece that made us human? You know, whatever, blah, blah. Buddha's got a different view. Consciousness is the point, not the body. The body's like a house. I find like karma is sort of like personal evolution. So here we are, let's say you're a human and you're in a human mummies, you're in a human form in Sweden, and you're old and you die, okay? You die. But in that life you're a human due to past karma, but in that life you created the causes to be killing and lying and harming and lazy and mean and nasty. So you program your mum as rubbish, then you die, that triggers a negative karmic seed, and then suddenly when you leave the body, you're all programmed and you're reborn and you'll run like a magnet to a lion mummy. And now your actions, your tendencies match perfectly. Like you're looking around, where's a body to suit my kind of mind? Look at that lion body. Perfect. Aggressive, big claws, ready-made to slaughter buffaloes for breakfast daily. That's the result of your karma. And the mummy lion has been sitting there since when? A long time. Where did mummy lion? So that was a house. That lion is a house. That mummy lion is a house, and you get your little house. So that house, you can track the house, that's evolution. You can track that lion house back to the mummy, and the next mummy, and the back one, and the previous, and the previous. That's the house, though. So in this time, I've come from a human, this person's come from a human body in Sweden. Due to negative karma, you create the cause to get a lion's house now. So you run like a magnet to a lion's house. But those lion's houses have been going back and back. And then when you die, maybe, one of your your human karmas might ripen. You never know. Anything's possible. And suddenly you branch off, or you might this time go to a lizard's house. So yes, those lizard houses are going back and back and back and back and back. And lizard houses have been programmed and adjusted according to what evolution is. But the minds keep going and going. We keep changing houses. So we only take it from the physical point of view, okay? But you've got to act in the minds. So then what was your question, Greg? I was getting to it. What was your question?
Oh, in the Medicine Buddha Puja, when it talks about like
degenerate time. Okay, thank you. Very good, thank you. Okay, so now we can see this planet of humans has only been around not very long, isn't it? So if minds are beginningless, and human minds are beginningless, and animal minds are beginningless, because they're all the states of mind. We give them labels, human, not the body. It's just a state of mind, and human is mostly virtue. Animal mind is mostly non-virtue. You've got a hell mind, and you've got a spirit mind, you have God minds, all kinds of minds. So at a period, certain period, they say we're in a very degenerate time right now. So before that, when a human mind, before this planet, would have been a much more subtle type of rebirth. We had light bodies. There was only virtue, no delusions, very blissful, very radiant, last a long time and get enlightened very easily. That was like a non-degenerate time. But then gradually delusions began to manifest. That polluted our wind energies. And then very soon, before you know it, we're now a human is born on a planet looking like a bunch of apes. So it's a very degenerate time now. And degenerate time means as a result of non-virtue, but also ironically, there can be something useful in degenerate times because good things are flourishing in degenerate times. But now is a degenerate time in comparison with previous human lives that were more subtle and more radiant and more blissful. That's a long answer.
Thank you, Venerable.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. Any more questions?
Actually, I have a question.
Yes, Lynn.
Hi. So does the different levels of hell play into any of this?
What, darling?
The different levels of hell and
What's the question?
That I read about.
What's the question?
So how does that play into this if we are going into different rebirths pretty much almost immediately? Do we not have those hells?
What do you mean immediately?
Well, I mean, like, if I die and then within a couple of weeks, I get into a new house, be it a human or insect or some type of other animal. And then what about this 14 or 18 degrees of hell?
What? I don't understand 18 degrees of
like when I read about Buddhism, they say there's different levels of hell that you have.
I don't know where all the information comes from, Lynn, but I'll tell you what I understand.
Okay.
In the big picture point of view, from the big picture point of view, which I've been describing before, there are trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of mind possessors, sentient beings, okay? Trillions of sentient beings. All these minds that are beginningless, number one point. Number two, every millisecond of what those minds do, and then what we do on the basis of that mind with our body and speech, if we have that, we are programming our mind and we are creating our futures. We are producing our future. When you sow seeds in the ground, you produce your future garden. When you sit there playing piano now, you're producing the future musician. It's a fairly logical kind of concept. So moment by moment, this is the meaning of karma, we are producing the person we become. The person we are now is the result of what we produced before. So Buddha's saying, then we look into the model of the mind, and we see lots of negative states of mind, ego-based, ego grasping, which clings to a separate sense of me, attachment to get what that me wants, aversion and anger when we don't get what we want, and all the other neurotic states of mind. These are we're prevalent, we recognize them. And then we have virtuous states of mind. There are existing virtuous states of mind. So there are certain levels of existence, Buddha said, there's a whole spectrum in samsara. There's a whole spectrum of existence, all kinds of minds, all within the kind of the framework of first at the top, certain sentient beings who have lots of access to lots of virtue and some delusions, all the way to rebirths or experiences, states of mind of beings who, as a result of negativity, are having intensely suffering experiences. So there are relatively happy experiences, and there are rough, extensive, powerful experiences. And they're labeled as different realms of existence. They're all states of mind. They're all living beings, and they're all experiencing the fruits of their past actions. So in terms of this samsara that Buddha talks about, the 6 realms of existence, There are some rebirths, like, for example, they call one like a God realm. That's really the equivalent, and I'd say that, of the same as the Muslims and the Christians call heaven or paradise. It's a subtle state of being. The physical energies, your 4 elements, have manifested as light, and as a result of lots of virtue. It's an experience that you have created. There's no one has sent you there. There's no view like the Christian one where you're sent there by somebody. There's no concept of being created and being rewarded. It's the fruit. Everything we experience is the fruit of what we have done. We create our own realities. So due to lots and lots of virtue, one karmic result is what's called a God realm, this radiant, blissful state of mind, subtle physical energy made of light, and very blissful appearances of delicious experiences. Everything is created by our mind. Then you've got humans, which is not so cool. We've got pretty rubbish, but it's still got virtue. It's a reasonable rebirth to have, because we can at least use our intelligence to get the hell out of this mess. Then we have what they call the lower realms, and this is the three main realms, the manifestation of the 3 main delusions. This is all psychologically based. So there's the animal realm. We get that. We see them. And these are the result of predominantly negative tendencies. And their experiences intensely suffering. Mainly access only their delusions and their ignorance. And because of their delusions and ignorance, they suffer 1 billion times more than we do, because delusions and ignorance cause your suffering. We've at least got access to some virtue. Further down, even more suffering, are what they call spirits. Billions of these. We hear about these ghosts and all this kind of business. People hearing voices, people being possessed. These are spirits, a subtler kind of form. Their energy, their physical energies may be air, and their minds are unbelievably suffering, unbelievable suffering. These are real beings according to the Buddha's observation. Of course, it's science fiction for us in the West. And these are the result of negativity and the predominance there of incredible grasping and attachment, and the suffering 1 billion times heavier than our attachment. Further down the spectrum, the most intense suffering of all is called the hell realms. And this is why it seems to me over the centuries, all kinds of cultures, all cultures observe something like this. Of course, materialists think it's a load of rubbish, everyone's stupid but them, but never mind, I'm not going to insult any viewpoint. So the Buddha's view is there are beings, and you could argue their bodies are made of fire, the fire element. You know, their minds are conjoined with the fire element. It's intense mental suffering. So these are all living beings, all trillions and trillions and trillions of them. As Lama Yeshe said, hell is not some place where the devil is waiting, saying, ha ha, I'm waiting for Lama Yeshe. It is the manifestation of the negative energy of that sentient being. Okay? That's a way of describing the Buddha's view. All right, then, thanks. Any other questions, folks? Who's that?
I had a question.
Good, darling, talk to me. There's 2 people there. Who was that? Then
I was wondering.
Bill first, and then Karthik. Okay, Bill first. Go, Bill.
Sorry, I was wondering if you could please say more about the Aryatara. Its meaning and its.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do that. I'm so sorry. I'll do that. I will do that in a second. Let me get.
Okay.
Karthik, what's your question? I will do that, Bill.
Thank you.
What's your question, Karthik?
Thank you so much, Robina. Just a really quick question about the different mantras, and when we use them day to day, and in remedy part of Vajrasattva practice, for example. Like, I just wondered if you resonate with a particular mantra, say the Buddha's mantra, like, you know, is there a particular times where, I mean, is there a reason why you should use one over the other? Like,
exactly,
you know,
I understand that, exactly. And this is really coming to the meaning of Tara, back to the one. So I remember recently I had to do write something about the meaning of mantras for somebody. There's various levels of meanings. And of course, Lama Zopa, when he talks about it, it's quite esoteric. But we can just keep it simple. So by saying Chenrezig, for example, if we're buying into the idea that he represents love and compassion, you could argue, you can say it any time you like, but really a good time to say it in the day is a counteract when you're feeling angry or upset. Immediately, just have it in there to sort of put water on your fire, you know, or just any time you want to open up to somebody, you can think of it that way. Manju, gentle voice, is powerful, and they use it a lot in the monasteries. And you say this mantra. This one we didn't do, but you can do it for me now. You can just I can add it to the list, but it's not His Holiness. No, I won't add anything to His Holiness. I'll just give it to you now if you'd like. Just say it after me. Om, Ah, Ra, Pa, Sa, Na, Di. Om, Ah, Ra, Pa, Sa, Na, Di. Om, Ah, Ra, Pa, Sa, Na, Di. Om Arabhatana Di. And it's Manjushri, cutting through the obstacles. So this is in the monasteries, they use it a lot, you know. It's especially for speech. There's several. They talk about developing the wisdom of composing, the wisdom of explaining, the wisdom of debating, the wisdom of, great wisdom, clear wisdom. There's all these and these wonderful meditations where you visualize different things coming into you and blessing you. But this is said to be the power of speech, very powerful for your speech. Even sounds like it's delicious. And even there's a little meditation where you can do, this is if you're studying, you want to kind of try and develop your wisdom as well as your wisdom for debating, so you can really get clear. Speech is important. So they do the mantra, you recite the mantra. They do this first thing in the morning in the monasteries. You hear them all, little monks and nuns going to the gompa for their prayers, really fast. And then at the end, when you finish your little mantra, you then, because the last syllable, they call it, all these mantras, there's the mantra, and then there's the last syllable, usually that's the essence of the whole thing. They call that the seed syllable. So here it's D. So at the end, when you finish, you go, then you hold your breath and you go, for as long as you can. And then you swallow, and you imagine you're swallowing it and you're blasting out your ignorance. It's a lovely little meditation. So nice, That's wisdom. Wisdom of speech, as well as sharp mind, clear mind. Then you've got compassion, good heart. Then you have medicine Buddha, clearly for healing, but not just for healing, very powerful for achieving your wishes, getting things done. I mean, there's a huge one for success in things, medicine Buddha, as well as healing. So if you do any kind of healing, if you even just do, you do massage, something, it's so beneficial to visualize medicine Buddha blessing you and going through, and you say mantra that blesses you and your hands and your energy to bless the other person. So beneficial. Then you've got Tara. So Tara, like I said, you need compassion to want to benefit others. You need wisdom to know how, but you've got to have the ability to act and to do things and cut through the obstacles and make things happen and be successful and courageous. Tara represents that, Bill. Does that make sense? Confidence, courage, cut through the obstacles, persevere, don't give up, be successful. Bill, does that make sense? Tara. So Karthik's question, Shakyamuni Buddha, for example, I remember I was talking to Yang Simshe here, and he said, you could argue, you could say that Buddha, there's this lovely story about the Buddha when he went and sat, he's did all these years of hard practice, walking, training so hard, doing all his practice, all his studies, all his meditation. So then eventually he sits down under this tree near the Naranjana River, Bodh Gaya, under this big tree, and he made a powerful determination that he would never move until he got realizations. And his hand is on his right knee in the mudra, they say it's the earth-touching mudra. His hand is pointing down on his right knee, touching the earth, and he said, the earth is my witness. So it's a very strong one for determination to never give up. Perseverance, Shakyamuni. They're all, in the end, they're all Buddha. But it's like different qualities. You need all of the qualities. So you get, and some of us, you see, also eventually when you do tantric practices, you eventually recognize, you eventually get a connection with one particular one that is your main practice for that life. And often that is the one, they call this in Tibetan your yidam, your meditation Buddha, your meditation deity. And it's the one that in this life, your particular characteristics have a strongest connection with. Now we can see some people have got a peaceful aspect. Some people are very tall and ethereal and thin. Some people are very loud and bossy. Some people are very short and fat. We've all got different connections actually with these different Buddhas. So you find the one that suits you in that life. That means, and so, for example, our Lama, one of our Lamas, Geshe Lama Kontrog, who was in Kopan for many years. He was a great yogi. He knew Lama Yeshe and he were friends when they were kids in the 30s, in the 40s, early 40s in Sarah. And they left in the 50s. So he went off to meditate. He spent all his life in caves. Amazing, highly realized yogi. And as Lama Zopa said, he lived in Vajrayogini's Pure Land. His main deity was Vajrayogini, this gorgeous, sexy red lady. And when you met him, he's tall, he'd scare the life out of you. So wrathful, all wrinkled, because he lived for years in caves, no food, no sleep, and no clothing. So he's this blissful, radiant being, but looking like a rough old grandpa, but he's actually in his nature Vajrayogini. So you can easily have a deity, or you like Tara best, and you visualize yourself as Tara. You want to become Tara. So boy and girl doesn't make a difference. Some girls can have the wrathful male, wrathful Yamantaka. If you met him in human form, he'd scare the life out of you. So there's all different energies and their different psychological qualities, and we eventually meet and connect with the one that suits us best. But we need all. We need a lot. Do you understand, people? That's an interesting topic we got onto today, isn't it? What else, people, before we finish, before we go home? Yep.
Can I please ask a question?
Who's talking? Where
It's
are you?
Alessia.
Yes, Alessia. Alessia, go, darling.
Looking for instructions on prostrations, I find that there is a mantra associated to making prostrations, which also mentions Manjushri.
Manjushri. I know, I don't understand it. I know that, and I know that. I know, but I don't understand how to explain it. But I've got some commentaries from Lama Zopa, and I think he must explain all these things. I know, but it's got another meaning. I don't understand the meaning. I kept one of those things I kept asking, remembering to ask, to explain. I never asked, so I don't know the answer.
Okay,
but I'll try to find out for you.
Can I ask another question?
Yes,
Brief.
darling. Yes.
Because the mantra is a sound.
Start again, what?
Because mantra is sound.
Yes.
If we do it in our mind without speaking out,
yes,
does it still resonate somehow in our...
Yes. When we do retreats, there's different ways we can do the mantra, and absolutely we can do it at a subtler level, because even though we do it, we must do it at the grosser level to bless our speech, but also because if we do it at a subtle level in the mind, that purifies the wind energies, because the mind is connected to the winds. So that's a way to purify the mind. Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the most powerful ways to do it. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Good.
Sorry, Venerable, I just want to follow up one more time
yes,
just regarding that question. So say you associate determination with the Buddhas, or I mean, associated with a particular mantra. Like, I'm just wondering, intention and motivation, how does that play into, like, say you could do that with any mantra, right? Like in particular in a mantra that you're connected with. In the remedy part of Vajrayana practice, for example, like, if I do the Buddha's mantra, it just connects with me. I don't know what you think of the intention and motivational aspect. Say if you just think of that quality and associate it with the practice, or is it? I
think you're asking several things in there. Can you separate the thoughts, please, and ask me one at a time?
So just in terms of, I know mantras are themselves inherently not like of a particular value or quality, right? I mean, they're associated with
nihilism. That's not true. That's not true. Okay. We can see if we look. If you put 27 things on your table, we all know conventional reality is each one of them would have a name, and each one would have a function. Do you agree with that? Yeah. So one might be a poison pill, and one might be a vitamin, one might be a knife. They've each got a name and they have a function, and conventionally they have that function, but they don't have an intrinsic function, but it still functions. So if you eat the poison pill, it'll still kill you. If you eat the vitamin, it will benefit you. If you use a knife, it will cut something. So things have a function, but they're not inherent. So mantra is the same now, but there's one added component here, and this is where we have to think about it. That all the lamas would say, any practices we do that connect with the Buddhas in any way, their mantra, the visualization, saying their names, because of what an enlightened being is, because of the stupendous power of that enlightened being, it becomes like a super best medicine, whether you know what's in that vitamin or not. Now, we get that. We understand you don't have to know what's in a vitamin for it to help you. Okay, they have all this thing of, what's that word they use when they put nothing in it? What's that word? When you
placebo.
That placebo, that one. So that's interesting in the way it's proving emptiness. But there is still some value for sure. And conventionally, there is value in mantra. So you could argue, without knowing what's in a vitamin, when you're old and sick and someone gives you vitamins or food, it keeps you alive. So it does function. The practice and mantras are the same, but the more you put meaning into it, the more you have intention, the more motivation, the more power it has. It's pretty clear. And in the end, with purification, all these practices are just traditions that have been set up over the centuries by the lamas, and we pass them on. We just do them because there's a meaning. But anyone can do purification. You can do Mani Padme Hum when you do purification. You don't have to do Bodhisattva. It's just that a tradition has been this way. Okay. If you want to do Tara practice, you do the Tara mantra. You don't start doing Manjushri then. It's just a different energy.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
That's wonderful.
All right. Okay. Andrew, what else? How are we going, Andrew?
Venerable, I have a question.
Yes, Kamena.
What happened to the mind when you cremate the body? It's just because you said about something donation, organ donation, and I was wondering what happened when you incinerate a body.
Well, you have to know whether the mind is still there or whether the mind is not there. You have to establish that. So if the mind is still in the body, when you burn the body, that could be shocking for the mind. It could make the mind distressed and then leave quickly, and that could then create negative karma for the person. It might not be so good. That's why it's so important to check carefully before you disturb the body. That's why it's important.
Okay, thank you.
Do you understand?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So there are ways of checking. This new book of Rinpoche's that's come out, and I really recommend you get it. As I said, it came out this month from Wisdom, called How to Face Death Without Fear. There's different scenarios of what to do at the time of death. If you die at home, if you die in a hospital, if you die giving your organs, if you die suddenly, or if you different scenarios, and explains things. It's very, very helpful. So it's really important to make sure the mind has gone before you disturb the body. That's what's important. Yeah. So what else, people? Anything else? Where's Andrew? Or where's Carly? Somebody. Where's the bosses?
We're here.
There you go, darling. So talk to me. So are we finished, Andrew, do you think? What do you think?
Does anyone else have any other questions? I had a couple in the chat. You're welcome to chime in.
Go on then, tell me those.
Candy, did you want to jump in, or Tharpa, did you have a question? If not, no worries. And Venerable Robina, we did have a request if you could send the story, the Stupa story as well via PDF.
Okay, I'll add that. It's a lovely story, isn't it? I'll add that to the document. Okay, I will do that. And I'll add the lovely Tibetan calligraphers' mantras in Tibetan. I'll add that as well. I'll do that.
I have another question.
Who's that, darling? Yes, we don't.
So do trees and shrubs and flowers have mind consciousness too? Or?
What is called a tree, from the Buddhist point of view, is it's not a mind possessor. There are many sentient beings living in the tree, but in the same way that this physical flesh of you is the house of your mind, a tree is not the house of a mind. That's according to Buddhism. But it's only when we're clairvoyant we'll discover the truth of that. Are you understanding me? Are you understanding me, Lynn? Okay, good. What were those written questions, Andrew? You said there were, Andrew, you said there were some written questions. Andrew.
So, Sasha, did you have a question there?
Yeah, I'm just not sure what the Padmasambhava mantra is for.
To get close to Guru Rinpoche.
Okay.
I mean, for example, His Holiness has a name mantra. Lama Zopa has a name mantra. Each Lama has their own name mantra, and they're just to help you feel close to that person, to get closer to them. That's as simple as that. It's as simple as that, darling. Do you understand?
Yeah, thank you.
Good, Sasha. You say it, and that'll give you some wisdom, baby. All right? Sasha?
Yeah, okay.
Good, sweetheart. Andrew, what else?
Okay, I think that's it, unless anyone else. Oh, we may have one more person here.
Oh, good.
I have a
yes,
question.
Candy, go talk to me, sweetheart.
Okay. So maybe I'm just not understanding what the word means, but you mentioned earlier something about Tantra and about using delusions and transforming them.
That's a whole different kettle of fish, darling. I'm so sorry. That's on a whole other level of reality. And basically what I'm saying is the different levels of practice and psychology and philosophy in the entire Buddhist path from A to Z, just like there is in math. You start with junior school 1 + 1, and then you get to physics, don't you? It's progressive knowledge. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Good. Okay, same here. So junior school entry level of practice, given that we're driven by delusions at the moment, we're berserk and run, we shoot our mouth off and we use our bodies to harm others. The first level of practice is control your body and speech. That's like junior school. You understand? Abide by the laws of karma. Have good behavior. Do you understand?
Yes.
Next level, you get down into the root of the problem, which you get into your delusions. You start to become your own therapist. You learn to meditate, or you can do that earlier if you like, and you really learn Buddhist psychology, and you learn to unpack and unravel the chaos of your own mind. Do you understand?
Yes.
Next level now, you're more prepared, you're more subdued, you're more blissful, you're more fulfilled, you're more content because you've worked on your body, speech, and mind. Now you go to the compassion wing and you realize, oh my God, we're all in the same boat. And now you continue to work on your mind, but now it's in relation to helping others. Even more profound. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So the first stages of practice, you're subduing delusions and their servants, which is your body and speech. Why? Because that causes you suffering. Do you understand that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In the compassion wing, you're now actively developing your virtuous states of mind. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the goal here, the goal of all of this is to head to Buddha, where Buddha is finally, you've removed all the delusion from your mind and you've perfected all the virtuous qualities. That's what we're heading for. So what's behind all these levels of practice is that job to be done. So the first level, you control your body and speech. Then you begin to control your mind. Then you get to the level you start to practice more compassion. You're growing and growing and growing and become a more marvelous person. Now you get to the Vajrayana, and it's a highly technical, as Lama Yeshe puts it, Tantra. And now there's a level of philosophy and psychology and understanding that can really, you work with the subtler physical and mental energies as tools to help you get rid of them very quickly. So it's a more skillful approach where even in this level, because you've got powerful renunciation, a powerful bodhicitta, and powerful understanding of emptiness, you're now able to work with all the subtle energies, including the negative. I know it sounds abstract to us, but it's literally true, but it's in order to quickly get enlightened. It's just the way to say it. That'll do for now. Will that make sense in that? Candy?
It does. Yeah.
Good, darling. I'm happy.
Thank
What
you.
else, people? I think we're done then.
Venerable Robina, question on Tantra.
Yes.
Lama Yeshe, in one of his books, it might have been a book, it might have been a recording I had read or had mentioned about Tantra being beneficial for like Western sort of society or civilization because of how we live. I just wondered if you could maybe comment on that briefly.
So this gets us to the degenerate time question as well. Degenerate times, the evidence of degenerate times, there's two things going on. One is there's masses of delusions, masses of violence and anger and rage and despair and attachment, but at the same time, lots of intelligence and lots of good things. So look at us. It's degenerate times. We've got so many marvelous things, so much intelligence, so much technology, but we're using it to do harmful things. So this is the character of a degenerate time. Well, some of these practices in Tantra are methods to help you purify attachment and purify anger. And so anytime that they are prevailing, if you're a skillful practitioner, you utilize that as grist for the mill. That's the concept. I go to abstract for us until we understand properly, but you have to understand the whole path to get to that properly. The more you do high school where you understand delusions and virtue, and the more you understand emptiness, and the more you have bodhicitta, and the more renunciation you have, the more all this is logical and you're able to understand it. Otherwise, it's too abstract for us. Do you understand?
Makes sense. Yes, absolutely. It's a grist for the mill is kind of like
yes.
Compost for the garden.
That's exactly right, darling. That's exact. But in other words, the point is the only person who can use poison for medicine, the only person who can use all the shit, the only person who can use all the grist for the mill is a person who understands that stuff. And the only person who can use attachment and anger is that you not only understand it, but has controlled it. And it's a skill you utilize. Okay, all right. That'll do. Andrew, we're done. What's that? Another person. Yes, Andrew. Look at you all. There's Carly. And show us.
Reese wanted to say hello before we do the
hello, Reese. Good morning, Reese, to you, sweetheart.
Yep.
Hello, darling.
Should we move to the dedication here?
Hello, Reese. How are you, sweetheart? Good morning, Reese.
Hi.
Hello. Hey. Good. Yeah, let's do the dedication. Good morning, Reese. I'm happy to see you, darling. Let's do our dedication. Little baby prayers. My God, look at that cup. As big as a head. Woo! She actually drinks out of the cup. That's amazing. Look at that. My God, amazing. Okay, let's do our little prayers together if you want. Just to dedicate, okay? So just, again, the meaning of these. Don't just say it like empty prayers. The meaning. Every thought counts, okay? Every thought sows seeds. So what we're doing is reminding ourselves that we began with this aspiration to do this job of listening, thinking, analyzing, so we can take some tools so we can develop our qualities. Here we're dedicating this 2 hours of hard work. All these seeds we planted. And we think we're going to nourish these seeds from this moment forward with our efforts and our goodness. And then so it says, due to all these seeds we've planted, I want to quickly become a Buddha, so I can lead all beings without exception into that state. So we're kind of offering the fruits of all this hard work to sentient beings. And the second one is this aspiration, that bodhicitta, this amazing, outrageous kind of shift in the mind. Whereas it's in the way the translator last night put it, instead of, where you made this switch from cherishing others instead of cherishing yourself. So powerful. And we make this aspiration, this attitude of compassion and love and powerful attitude to benefit others. May it grow and grow in the minds of all beings who've got it, and may it never diminish, you know. Gewadinyu tutar lama sangye drugyune drowa chikyang malupa dei sala kupasho Jangchob semchog rinpoche ma ke panam ke guchi ke panyampa me payang gongne gongdu pava sho. All right, you people. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew. May God flourish. Okay.
But just a reminder, everyone, the last teaching will be on Tuesday night.
Oh, right. We have one more, don't we? Yes, another one. Good.
Yes.
So I'll see some of you on Tuesday.
Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to email, and I'll send over the updated document from Venerable.
And I'll send you the new version of the Dalai Lama's ones, plus the nice calligraphy, plus the story. Okay.
Thank you so much,
I'm
Venerable.
leaving now. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Robina.
Thank you. Thank you, Robina. Andrew, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
If you have any questions, I'll stick around in the chat if you have any questions. Otherwise, see you all Tuesday.
Thank you, Robina.
Oh, so sweet.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.